All right, Raina, we ready? All right, I'd like to call to order the City of Healdsburg City Council Redevelopment Successor Agency regular meeting. Today is September 16th. It's 6 o'clock. Let's do a quick roll call, please.
Councilmember Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Harrod.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly. Here. Vice Mayor Mitchell.
Here.
Mayor Higley.
Here. If everybody could join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we approve the agenda, there's one item, consent item A, that we're going to be pulling from the agenda. So aside from agenda item 6A, could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. We'll move on. We had no closed sessions. So we'll go to announcements and presentations. We'll start with California Native American Day proclamation.
Thank you. A proclamation of the City Council of the City of Healdsburg proclaiming September 27, 2024 as California Native American Day in the City of Healdsburg. Whereas the City of Healdsburg recognizes that we are on ancestral lands of the Southern Pomo and Wapo people, that this land was historically unjustly taken during the settlement of Euro-Americans, and that the rich history of our indigenous communities, past, present, and future, should be recognized, respected, and honored. And whereas the City of Healdsburg expresses its gratitude to the original stewards of this land for establishing natural, mutually beneficial relationships with the earth without the intent for commoditization or exploitation. And whereas the City of Healdsburg acknowledges the historical attempts to degrade the Native peoples, tribes, and land from which the effects are still felt today in the lived experiences of our indigenous community members. And whereas the City of Healdsburg recognizes the necessity to include indigenous voices in city governance and planning, consistent with our values of community and diversity, and acknowledges we have a responsibility to establish and make visible the city's relationship to Native peoples. And whereas Native American Day began in California in 1939, and in 1968, California tribal leaders and the governor declared the fourth Friday of September as California Indian Day, and whereas September 27th, 2024 is the day to honor the tribes of California for their accomplishments, outstanding achievements, and contributions, both historical and cultural, to our communities. And whereas Native Americans continue to play an invaluable role in enriching our community's culture with a long and esteemed heritage, as well as being an integral part of our rich diversity. And whereas the wisdom and craft traditions of Native Americans hold important values for our community and have helped to make our community stronger, more prosperous. And whereas we celebrate the richness of the tribal history and traditions and the impact Native American cultures have had upon every American. And whereas in observance of Native American Day, the City Council of the City of Healdsburg encourages all citizens to join in recognizing the accomplishments and contributions Native Americans have made to our city, and salutes those who have sought to honor the important role of tribal leadership in our city's past, present, and future. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Healdsburg hereby proclaims September 27th, 2024 as California Native American Day in the City of Healdsburg.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Sherry Smith Ferry. I'm TIPO of the Director. Very happy to be here for that public recognition, and thank you for it. And I would say on behalf of the Rancheria, we are really looking forward to a constructive relationship with the City of Healdsburg in the future. And I will turn it over to Jack.
Hi, I'm Jack Pollard with the Progressive Tribal Alliance, and just like to say thank you for the proclamation, the acknowledgement of the kind words It means a lot to the community to have this said and have it acknowledged, and just want to say thank you.
Thank you. If you can stick around, we'd like to give you the proclamation and take a photo. We have a few more proclamations, but then we'd love to get a photo if that's okay. Thank you. All right, next up is Pollution Prevention and Creek Week proclamation. Councilmember Kelly.
Thanks. So a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Healdsburg declaring September 22nd through 29th, 2024 as Pollution Prevention Week and September 16th through the 23rd as Creek Week in the City of Healdsburg. Whereas throughout the United States, the week starting on the third Monday of September is recognized as National Pollution Prevention Week. And throughout much of California, including the Russian River watershed, cities, counties, and other stewardship organizations are recognizing the fourth week of September as Creek Week. Our pollution prevention practices are intrinsically linked to the health of our watershed lands and waterways. And the City of Healdsburg supports programs to reduce pollution, increase the environmental quality of our watershed, and provide our residents and visitors with the knowledge to be effective stewards of the Russian River watershed, lands, and waterways. And the nearly 1,500 square miles of lands, 150 creeks, and approximately 350,000 residents of the Russian River watershed, including approximately 4.5 square miles of land, 4 miles of Foss Creek, and the Russian River, and 12,000 residents of the City of Healdsburg are connected and mutually support each other. And the Russian River, along with its tributaries and associated features, are important resources to the City of Healdsburg. And pollution in the form of trash, debris, chemicals from industry and everyday living, and sediment from construction and many land uses and activities all have the potential to degrade the quality of life and the quality of resources within the Russian River watershed. And the City of Healdsburg strives to protect our lands and waterways through ongoing pollution prevention outreach, which aims to raise awareness of the harmful effects of pollutants to our natural systems. And during Pollution Prevention Week and Creek Week, creek, river, and ocean cleanup campaigns will take place throughout Sonoma and Mendocino counties, including the annual Foss Creek Cleanup event on September 28, 2024, sponsored by the City of Healdsburg. So now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Healdsburg hereby declares September 22nd through the 29th as Pollution Prevention Week and September 16th through the 23rd as Creek Week in the City of Healdsburg, and asks all members of our community to support efforts to protect and enrich our watershed health by participating in the many Pollution Prevention Week and Creek Week activities, and to take active steps to reduce pollution and care for our environment throughout the year.
Thank you. Welcome.
I'd like to thank City Council for declaring Creek Week and Pollution Prevention Week. Both are critical for raising awareness and keeping our watersheds clean. My name is Michael Harrigan. I'm the Stormwater Program Manager for the City of Healdsburg Public Works, and I have the honor of organizing this year's event. It'll be at the Community Center on Saturday, September 28th at 8:30 a.m. Breakfast and lunch will be provided by the Rotary Club and Kiwanis. There'll be some raffle prizes at the end of the event. I encourage everyone to volunteer. It should be a great event and help keep our watersheds clean.
Thank you. Yeah, that is a fun event. I think we've all done that. A lot of stuff gets picked up, and there's all the competition for what's the Crud Cup? Is that what it's called? And it's the little, like the gopher from Caddyshack, right? All right. Next up is a proclamation recognizing September 30th through October 6th, 2024 as International Active Aging Week in Healdsburg. Councilmember Edwards.
Okay, a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Healdsburg recognizes September 30th through October 6, 2024 as International Active Aging Week. Whereas the International Council on Active Aging, ICAA, Active Aging Week is annual international health promotion that allows older adults, their families, and their friends to participate in activities and events which take place in a safe and welcome atmosphere. And whereas the United Nations recognizes October 1st as International Day of Older Persons to recognize contributions of older persons and to examine issues that affect their lives. And whereas the total world population has more than over over age 65 than children under 5, and Active Aging Week is a global movement that recognizes the social, economic, personal, and public health dynamics that come with the changes in changing demographics. And whereas the city of Healdsburg was the first city in Sonoma County to be designated as an age-friendly city and has committed to providing quality services to seniors that support the city's designation as being an age-friendly city. And whereas Active Aging Week showcases the capabilities of older adults as fully participating members of society, and that these persons, regardless of income level, age, or background, are vibrant members of our community. Now, whereas be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Healdsburg hereby recognizes September 30th through October 6th, 2024 as International Active Aging Week, and encourages all citizens to recognize the value of active and aging for older adults.
Welcome, Donna. Lynn?
Good evening. I'm Donna O'Brien, the current chairperson of the City of Healdsburg's Senior Advisory Commission, and I am proud and honored to accept this proclamation on behalf of the seniors in our community. As stated in the proclamation, Active Aging Week showcases the capabilities of older adults as fully participating members of our Healdsburg community. I invite everyone to check out the exciting events planned by the Healdsburg Senior Center in celebration of Active Aging Week. Full details are available on the city website, the Healdsburg Senior Center newsletter, and on local social media. Join us as we celebrate our aging community with many fun and free events. Once again, proclamations such as this one and others show that Healdsburg is a great place to age at any age. Thank you.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Lynn Fernandez. I'm president of the Friends of the Healdsburg Senior Center. On behalf of the Friends of the Healdsburg Senior Center, I gladly accept the proclamation for International Active Aging Week. And thank you for acknowledging the Friends of the Senior Center's role in these activities. This is a golden opportunity for the Friends to help our older adult community to enjoy a week of events geared for their enjoyment throughout Healdsburg. If anyone ever wondered just how active our Healdsburg senior older adults are, I'm one of them. You should have come along with 49 others and myself last Saturday when we took a bus trip from the Healdsburg Senior Center, went down to San Francisco, got on the Hornblower yacht, toured the bay, had lots of champagne and a great meal, and just so much fun. We danced, we laughed, it was a great time. I invite each of you to join our active older adult community with your fellow neighbors as the Friends of the Senior Center sponsor our annual fundraising event on October 4th. It's called Celebration. It's a fun-filled evening event taking you back to the 50s, 60s, and 70s with music by none other than our Mayor Hadley, delicious foods, wines, and raffle items. Please come see how we actively can age together and look for the smiles. Thank you.
Do pollution, and then we'll do, neighborhood.
Wait, there's one. Which one do you want to do?
Begin.
All right, next up is city manager reports.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually have just a couple of updates for you. First off, a calendar announcement. You all heard about the creek cleanup on the 28th, so I know you'll be there, and that is a great event. Also that day, though, is the Healdsburg Arts Festival. So this is organized by the Healdsburg Center for the Arts and sponsored by the city of Healdsburg, running on Saturday, the 28th from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. It's a day of art, food, and wine with over 40 artists exhibiting. And there will be raffle prizes to win art from the artists at the HCA Gallery. So it should be a really good event. One more example of a lot of the great arts programming that's been happening around town. So for anybody who's not too worn out after cleaning out the creek that morning, we definitely want to encourage folks to go out and enjoy that. And then just one other update is I'm proud to share with you that we are currently live on YouTube right now. You may recall that this was one of the city council's goals to broaden our reach in terms of live casting these meetings. So it's happening. That's not a substitute for the other ways that people can watch us, including Facebook, but it is a new channel that's available. The city's account on YouTube is Go Healdsburg. So if you search for that on Healdsburg and look for the live tab, you'll find us. We actually did this at the last meeting, but kept it quiet to make sure it would work, but it seems to work. So we're live right now and the meetings will be archived, and there are some features that make it a little bit easier to search for certain things within the videos. So for folks who are more comfortable with that platform, just one more way to either keep track of these meetings live or go back afterwards and watch them. And that concludes my update. Thank you.
All right, nice short update this time. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm happy that we are on YouTube for those who don't want to get on Facebook. And you can utilize, as the city manager said, the features of the transcript to search a little easier than going to the city site or trying to find it on Facebook. So I really appreciate getting that going.
Thank you for that. And I was very remiss in not thanking our city clerk, Raina Allen, who of course did the work to make that happen. So appreciation for her.
All right, well, thank you. Next up is public comments on items on the consent calendar and non-agenda items. This time is set aside to receive comments from the public regarding matters of general interest not on the agenda, but related to the city council business. Pursuant to the Brown Act, however, the city council cannot consider any issue or take action on any request during this comment period. So with that, I'd like to open up public comment. Kathy or Dan, which... All right, Dan, welcome.
Hello there, Dan Pizza. Anyhow, I'm here tonight to lodge a formal complaint.
Can you pull the mic up so we can hear? There you go.
I'm here tonight to lodge a formal complaint. In the past several weeks, Chris Harrod has used his as a member of the city council to attack me personally multiple times with various disparaging remarks because of my opposition to Measure O. These attacks have come in his weekly newsletter, mass emailings, and the Healdsburg Tribune. He has also published links to online documents which mention my name in his emailings, newsletter, and Facebook. I am in opposition to Measure O because it lacks any forethought, was poorly written, and will not achieve its goal of affordable housing. I have made my views clear in my argument against Measure O in the voter handbook, social media, the Press Democrat, and Healdsburg Tribune. At no time have I ever mentioned Chris Harrod's name in expressing these views. Chris Harrod, on the other hand, has mentioned my name multiple times. He was somehow able to have a rebuttal letter to my letter published in the Healdsburg Tribune on September 5th on the very same day. His rebuttal letter called me out by name and stated, "You won't see anything like the preposterous 2,000 ultra luxury units recently trumpeted by Dan Pisa." 2,000 ultra luxury units was in quotation marks, inferring that I had either said or written these words. That never happened. Chris has also made comments such as opponents to Measure O have demonstrated that they are leaning on a particular rhetorical tool to use in their efforts, absurd exaggerations, NIMBYs like conservative Dan Pizza. And my personal favorite, after calling me out by name almost exclusively, Mr. Harrod states, "It's no secret that among Measure O's opponents are some with outspoken NIMBY, xenophobic, and anti-immigrant opinions." Basically, he's calling me a liar and a racist to the whole town of Healdsburg. I would expect that going forward, Chris Harrod would no longer refer to me by name. I would also expect that all past references to me in online documents be removed, and that those who received any emails, postings, or newsletters with my name mentioned or links to documents containing my name be notified to explain that my name had been removed because of connection to false statements. Finally, since Mr. Harrod found it appropriate to contest not only my views on Measure O, but more importantly, my character in media in which I was unable to defend myself, I'm asking that the council give me an opportunity to do so in a public forum. I propose a public debate with Mr. Harrod on the night of the candidates forum. In the words of our vice president, if you have something to say it in my face. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kathy, welcome. You can leave it with the city clerk and we'll get it later.
In light of the Falls Creek, or not the Roger Creek fault setting off, back in 1969, there was a massive earthquake that hit Santa Rosa. Day after that, Healdsburg fault set off with over 200 quakes. Now, right now, it is 30 years past the time that they predicted we may have another one. I have this here. The Healdsburg fault is active geological feature associated with the Santa Rosa Plain and the Alexander Valley, Sonoma County, California, east side of the floodplains. The bound is a strike slip, and it goes on in here. Then they say if the fault was to become active, it could reach a 7.5 on the Richter scale. Is Healdsburg prepared for that? I doubt it. Everything's fire, fire, fire. I like to see actually a proclamation that October 1st and October 2nd is Earthquake Awareness Day, because Healdsburg got it on October 2nd. I was 10 years old. I was here. I don't know if you were here, Evelyn, but I was here. So I think we should have something on the website where seniors could download, not just a to-go bag, to stay kit of check off what they're going to need. It is updated. You need your phone charger. You need flashlights, and just things they could check off. I will leave some of this with you to go over. And when I was printing this out, I met a lady whose husband worked for the USGS, and her daughter's becoming a geologist, and they were very interested in this. So this is what I have to say. We're building high, which is not the smartest in this town, but who am I to argue? And in the 1906 earthquake, magnitude was 5.6 and 5.7. Double that occurred on this fault. This county anticipates similar every 20 to 30 years. Well, we're 25 years past that 30 years. 25, I go by my daughter's birthday. It was just 3 years after she was born. So it's something you guys should be aware. We should, have a meeting, have stuff on the internet where you not click, 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 click to get to where you're trying to find. It should be easy information on earthquake, how to prepare for it, and what needs to be done. Right now for fires, we got fires down. You could see them coming. An earthquake is like high blood pressure. It's a silent killer. You don't know when it's going to strike. So I'd like to see more on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once? All right, I will close public comment and we'll move on to the consent calendar. And keep in mind, we have removed item number 6A, so I'd entertain a motion on approval of the others.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent calendar is passed. And we'll go to the main item on here, item 7, which is public hearings. Fourth Amendment to the Development Agreement with Replay Healdsburg LLC and consideration of tentative subdivision maps for lots 1, 2, and 3 of the Mill District project. Linda? Scott, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Hegley, members of the council. I'm Linda Roofing from North Coast Community Planning, and I'm happy to be here this evening to present this report. There are 4 interrelated items and actions before the city council tonight. There's the Fourth Amendment to the Development Agreement, and then there's 3 tentative subdivision maps for lots 1, 2, and 3. The new maps make changes related to the revisions made in the Fourth Amendment. So the Fourth Amendment is the Fourth Amendment, but it's the first one to come to the City Council. There have been 3 previous amendments that were minor and administratively approved by the city manager. I just want to say that it's not unusual for development agreements to be amended multiple times over the course of the development of a big project that builds out over time. Saggio Hills had 4 amendments. North Village has had 4 amendments. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if you'll see more amendments for this project in the future as well. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the layout for the Mill District project, and most importantly, it shows the 7 lots that were created by the final map, and I'll be referencing these lots. So I just wanted to real quickly show you this so that council members actually have handouts, I think, on the dais that show the map as well. So the Mill District project approvals include 208 residential units, including 40 affordable units and 30 middle income units. There's a 53-room hotel that was approved, up to 15,000 square feet of commercial space along the Healdsburg Avenue frontage, and a 0.78 acre privately owned and maintained but publicly accessible park. Next slide, please. So I want to just take a moment to talk about why a city and a developer enter into a development agreement. From the developer's standpoint, the DA provides assurances that the project approvals will stand for the term of the DA. In this case, it's for 15 years. From the city's standpoint, with the DA, you can negotiate community benefits that go beyond what you can require as conditions of a project approval. And so as we review the Fourth Amendment tonight, I'll point out the items that are current asks from the developer, and also I'll point out items that are community benefits that have been negotiated into the Fourth Amendment by the city team. So in terms of the city team, City Manager Kay is the lead negotiator. When it comes to DAs, Mike Biddle from our city attorney's office is the lead drafter, and community development director, Diven, city attorney Zutler, and I comprise the rest of the team. So on the developer side, Mike McCone from Replay, he's their vice president of development, has been our main point of contact, and he's there this evening and I think has a few words to say after my presentation. So this slide and the next slide lists the community benefits that were embedded in the original Mill District DA. Affordable housing is kind of the first and foremost of them. The developer was required to provide 40 units of very low, low, and moderate income housing in the first phase of the development. That included the dedication of the land, the project design and permitting, installation of public improvements to serve that project, a $250,000 development contribution, and payment of the project's Quimby fees, which were almost $500,000. The Randall, which is shown on this slide, was constructed with tax credit financing and grants and is operated by Eden Housing. It's been fully operational since early last year. The developer is also required to provide 30 units of middle income housing, and some of the amendments that you'll be reviewing this evening relate to the middle income requirement. 70 of the 208 units in this project are below market rate units, so that's considerable. Next slide, please. So other community benefits include a 0.78 acre community park. There's $1.3 million of connectivity funds that they're required to pay to improve pedestrian and bicycle access in the vicinity of the project. There's a $1,045,000 payment that was made towards the purchase of the fire department's newest ladder truck. They will be paying a total of $2.5 million in parkland dedication fees, the Quimby Act fees, to offset the impacts of the residential uses on parkland. And then lastly, the project will provide new revenues to the city in the form of property taxes, transient occupancy tax, and sales tax. Next slide, please. So this slide provides a timeline for the project to date. The master entitlements were granted back in 2019, so that was a little over 5 years ago. Since that time, 3 parts of the development have been completed. The first was the affordable housing, which is the Randall. The second is the Lot 4 condominiums, also known as Canopy, which are the 43 units of market rate housing that are just coming online right now. And then the last part of that was the park, which is now open to the public. It's called the Preserve. And additionally, the developer has applied for and received permits for some of the upcoming phases of the development. They've applied for permits for the residential amenity, which is a pool and fitness facility for the residents of the project on Lot 1. They received that permit. I just want to note that the Fourth Amendment actually includes relocation of that facility from Lot 1 to Lot 5. They've applied for and received permits for 12 market rate condos on Lot 6. The Lot 1 hotel, the design review for that went to the Planning Commission at their last meeting on August 27th. It was approved, but conditioned on the fourth DA amendment being approved. And then the Lot 5 residential amenity and retail building was also considered by the Planning Commission on the 27th, and they had some suggestions for the design team, so they'll be coming back to make a decision on that at their October 8th meeting. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the current approved conceptual plan for the project, which is on the upper left, and the revised conceptual master plan that integrates the various changes that are embedded in the fourth DA amendment. So starting at the bottom left, I'll just quickly walk you through the master plan. On the lower left, that gray mass of buildings is the hotel with the restaurant and a retail building along the Healdsburg Avenue frontage. If you go to the right across Sawmill Circle, there's the retail and amenity building with the the pool to the back of it on lot 5, and then the park on lot 5. Notably, the commercial module for a future commercial building at the front of the park has been removed. And we'll discuss that later. Moving down Healdsburg Avenue, you come to the Lot 6 commercial building, and then heading up South Street, the 12-unit condo building for Lot 6 is on the left. The Randall, the affordable housing project, is on the right up at the corner. And then the 3 canopy buildings are to the left along the back side of the park. Those are on Lot 4 and access via Sawmill Circle. And then Lot 2 is the lot on the kind of the very top right. And then that's Lot 3. And then Lot 2 is the building that goes along the back property line and brings you back to the hotel. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to walk you through the various components of the 4th DA amendment. And I just want to say, like, it might seem complicated having read that lengthy staff report, but it's not that complicated. There's 3 primary pieces and then a couple of odds and ends. So there's changes to the location of the residential uses and the residential amenity, but otherwise it's still the same project in terms of the numbers of units. Changes that clarify that the middle income units will have access to the amenity, and that address concerns that were brought up at the Planning Commission meeting about the HOA fees and how ensuring the continued affordability of middle income units. And then there's changes to allow 12 of the 53 hotel rooms to be individually sold as hotel investment suites. So starting with the first ask from the developer, it was for the relocation of the residential amenity from Lot 1 to Lot 5. I want to give you just a little bit of background on why the developer requested this. Early on, the developer had planned to combine the residential amenity with the hotel and have the hotel operate it. And that wasn't flying in their conversations with developers. And so then they actually designed and got permits for an independent standalone residential amenity on the hotel site. That was a 2-story building with a pool deck that was going to conceivably be constructed in advance of the hotel, and then connected to the hotel. Anyways, as they started talking to hotel operators, it became evident that that really wasn't ideal for both logistical and operational reasons. Plus, as they started planning for Lot 5, it became clear that the challenges of providing parking to serve the residential uses on that lot were almost insurmountable given the access constraints of that lot. And so they concluded that relocating the amenity to Lot 5 has a lot of benefits, and it actually helps to solve some of these problems. The Planning Commission reviewed these changes first at a workshop and then at their hearings, and they've endorsed the relocation. So what comes along with that is right now, Lot 5 has 13 residential units that were planned for it. And so the developer has requested that those be moved to Lot 3 at the back of the lot. And kind of related to this, the DA requires the developer to build 8 of what were called affordable by design units that are middle income units that were capped at 800 square feet. They were just intended to be smaller and affordable by design, but they would be price restricted for their initial sale only. And the DA, the timing that it included for those units was that 2 of them were to be developed in each GMO cycle, beginning with the current cycle that we're in that ends at the end of this year. And it became clear that they weren't going to be able to deliver to affordable by design units, just because the timing for development of this project has already stretched out. So we asked them to address that in this DA amendment. And then, and as a city team talked about the affordable by design units, we asked for those units to just be converted to ownership middle income units, because the affordable by design units were they were a good concept, but they didn't ensure long-term affordability in any way, shape, or form. And so the developer has agreed to that. And so that's one city ask that I would say is actually a win for the city, because those units now as ownership units will be affordable in perpetuity. Next slide, please. So the developer asked that all 29 of the middle income units be located on Lot 3, which actually makes sense from just the economies of scale that can be achieved, and there's just benefits to co-locating them rather than having them scattered throughout the development. So what the DA does is it allows them all on, or the DA amendment, all to be on Lot 3, and there would be, so that's 29 middle income units, because one middle income unit has already been developed as the manager's unit on Lot 7. The city, as we looked at it, it became clear that the timing mechanism that's in the current DA is not optimal, because it basically leaves the delivery of the last, I think it's 14 middle income units to the very end of the development. And so we proposed a different timing mechanism whereby all of the middle income units need to be built before the first certificate of occupancy is issued for the market rate development on Lot 2. And the developer has agreed to that. So let's see, let's move to the next slide. Oops. Okay, so now we're going to move into the residential amenity issue that relates to the middle income units. This slide actually has kind of a bird's eye depiction of the residential amenity on Lot 5. At the August 13th Planning Commission hearing, when they reviewed the 4th DA amendment, the question was raised as to whether the middle income residents would have access to the amenity. Which is a really good question, and it became evident that, between the city and the developer, there was some disagreement over that. And part of it is that the documentation in the DA is really unclear about it. And so the Planning Commission wisely decided that this was a policy decision that should be brought forward to the city council, but rather than trying to work it out on the fly, they recommended that you move forward with the 4th DA amendment and provide clarification. So since that time, we have been working hard with the developer to come up with a way to make this work out. Our recommendation to council is that the middle income residents should have access to the amenity. We don't believe it was ever the city's intent to create a subdivision where neighbors would have different levels of access to the on-site recreational facilities. But I will say that it is clear in the documentation that Lot 7, the affordable housing unit, was not intended to have access to the amenity, and they're not included in the master association for the homeowners association that will be taking care of that. So the 4th amendment, we've woven in language that clarifies that the middle income units on lot 3 will have access to the residential amenities. And as we talked about this with the developer, it became clear that they had made representations and disclosures to some of the lot 4 homeowners, not exactly sure how it was woven into it, but that the amenity would only be available to homeowners. And so we've included in the DA the opportunity for all 29 of those remaining middle income units on lot 3 to be condominiums and owned as ownership units. We also found that the developer planned to allow the hotel investment suite unit owners, which I'll talk about a little more later, but to allow them to have access to the amenity. And we explained that that was not going to be permissible because that the hotel investment suite use is a commercial visitor lodging use, not a residential use. And the developer understood that, has accepted that. And so we've also woven language into the DA, making it clear that the amenity is for the residents only, and their guests. So the DA amendment, as I mentioned, it allows all 29 middle income units on lot 3 to be sold as middle income, as ownership units. And we are recommending that the council allow that and support that change, because this is the ownership middle income housing is an important and an underrepresented product in the city's housing stock. I also want to mention that the amended and restated middle income housing agreement that's attached to the DA amendment now requires the developer to market the ownership units for 180 days rather than 90 days before the city is presented with the option to exercise its first right of refusal to purchase those units. So that extension of time we think is necessary, given that there's going to be potentially 29 ownership units hitting the market at one point in time. And lastly, well, actually, this isn't lastly, but in terms of the middle income units, we've established a mechanism to cap increases in the homeowners association fees for the middle income units. This, as I mentioned, is a discussion that came out of the Planning Commission, a concern that with the residential amenity and the costs, that those costs could escalate to a point that it would effectively price the middle income homeowners out of their homes. So initially, we included a cap on the annual increase of fees that was tied to increases in the area median income for middle income households. It was a little confusing. The developer was not supportive of that cap, and as a result of some late breaking negotiations, we actually reached a resolution which the developer supports, which is instead of linking the HOA fee increases to MA or to AMI, we're now recommending that we use the Bay Area Consumer Price Index. So we believe this will be effective and at the same time much simpler and easier for prospective home buyers to understand. So we're recommending, in addition to Section 11 of the Fourth Amendment of the DA, that's the section that provides a new Section 5.9 for the residential amenity, and that's where language actually resides in the DA, talking about that linkage. And then we've also modified the special condition that will go, that's included with the Lot 3 tentative map conditions regarding the affordability mechanism. Okay, so this next slide actually shows the language that was proposed, or that is included in the amendment. This is, and we've provided this separately on the dais to council members. And basically what it says is that the CCNRs for the Master Association and for the Lot 3 Sub-Association shall include a provision to limit the amount of an annual increase in the total homeowners association dues, regular assessments, and/or reserves, inclusive of fees for the applicable condominium sub-association, master association, and private recreation facilities license fees that are payable by an ownership middle-income housing unit. It would be linked to the annual increase or annual percentage increase in the consumer price index for all urban consumers for the San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward area. And it provides a little more specificity about how to apply it. So that concludes my presentation on the middle income housing piece. Now I'm going to move to the hotel investment suite use. So if I can have the next slide, Raina. This picture shows kind of a bird's eye view looking down at the hotel. Okay, the hotel investment suite use is actually what got us started on this DA amendment. The developer came to staff and asked what it would take to allow 12 of the 53 rooms in the hotel to be independently sold as a way of helping to finance the hotel. And they provided a bunch of information about condo hotels and, you know, and the financing mechanism and ways to make the hotel still operate as a hotel. And so what we determined is that there is a provision in the city's land use code that allows the community development director to make a determination whether a use such as this is consistent with a use that is defined in the code and allowed in a district. So in this case, the hotel investment suite use, we worked closely with the developer to define it in a way that we believe makes it still remain a visitor lodging use. Which is allowed as a conditional use in the mixed use district. And so that the use is defined in the 4th DA amendment. It's in Exhibit E. And there's also a list of like 20 conditions that are attached, that must be complied with and that are attached to it that are required in order to ensure that the use would function as a visitor lodging use type. And so the way it would work is that these units would be condominiumized and sold independently. Their owners would have the right to use them for up to 90 days in a calendar year, but only for 30 consecutive days. And, but they would not be able to like privately decorate them or store their personal belongings in them. And when they're not in use by the owners, they are required to be signed over to the hotel to put them in the pool of rentable rooms. So then you come to the question of, well, okay, but during those 90 days, the city wouldn't be receiving transient occupancy tax. And so the use now requires the hotel operator to enter into a payment in lieu of transient occupancy tax agreements for the hotel investment suites, a pilot agreement for short. And the way this works is that the hotel operator will be required to make an annual payment to the city based on a daily minimum TOT guarantee, which is a formula that's embedded into the pilot agreement and summarized in the staff report. But in short, it assumes that the daily rent for an HIS unit would be 80% more than for a standard unit because they are bigger units. They are higher up in the hotel. But that the occupancy of those units would actually be 75% of the occupancy rate of the hotel units. And that's just based on industry standards for suites versus hotel rooms. So, anyways, that's the mechanism by which the city is kept whole on TOT. And then there's also a provision in the Fourth Amendment that limits the vested rights of the hotel investment suite use. Like, so the developer would only have 5 years in which to develop that use. And they have, I think 10 years left on their DA. So it's just to basically say, do it now or just do a hotel. So that's the hotel investment suite use. And there are 2 other little items on the next slide that I'll talk to that are unrelated and just kind of got lumped in. Can we have the next slide? Here we go. Okay, so the first one is to waive the payment of Quimby Act fees for the development or the encroachment of the stormwater system for this development into the park. And so if you see the circles on the diagrams there and the portions of those circles, that the circle that are green it's in the park, it's grass, but it is a stormwater basin. And based on the existing DA, the developer was required to pay a $60 a square foot Quimby fee for the use of the park to solve their stormwater issues. And they were kind of having a hard time with that. And then and at the same time, they also, as they were designing the residential amenity building, wanted to encroach a little bit into the park. And then the Planning Commission really wanted to see a patio for those the south-facing retail space that kind of looked into the park. And as we talked about this, it also became clear that there's that on the left-hand diagram, that white square is a commercial module that was part of the original approved plans for the project. It's 3,500 square feet. The plan was for them to develop a commercial building there that would both face Healdsburg Avenue and the park. A little bit challenging, as you know, the Planning Commission spent time talking about it. There were questions about like how that was really going to work. And so what the city team suggested was, how about just getting rid of that and incorporating it into the park, and in exchange, the city would waive the Quimby Act fees. And so that is our recommendation. It will give the city more almost 2,200 square foot addition to the park, even with that pink area netted out. And it actually makes the park a lot more usable. And so we are recommending that, and it is woven into the 4th DA amendment. And the last piece was just a modification to the timing of the payment of the connectivity funds. The developer in the current DA is required to pay $1.3 million to the city for bike and pedestrian projects in the vicinity of the project site. The 4th Amendment includes a minor change that splits the first $400,000 payment into 2 pieces and keeps the second payment intact. And those payments are callable like when the city requests them. So we're recommending that change. Next slide, please. So this slide just has the findings for approval of a development agreement or an amendment to a development agreement. Consistency with the general plan, that the DA provides tangible benefits beyond those that can be required through conditions of approval, and that it complies with CEQA. The Planning Commission's review included a detailed consistency analysis. Their recommendation for council approval of the Fourth Amendment includes findings, which are now, for all of these findings, that are woven into both the ordinance and the DA amendment. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to briefly review the 3 tentative subdivision maps. And I want to start with just a quick explanation of what a tentative map is. It's a preliminary map that basically outlines the proposed layout of a future subdivision, and it's reviewed to ensure compliance with zoning and planning requirements. In contrast, the final map, which the City Council is also tasked with approving, includes detailed engineering plans, the final lot dimensions, all of the conditions of the tentative map get carried forward, but then it's approved by the council, recorded with the county, and then it makes the subdivision legal so that lots can be sold. What you're being asked to approve tonight are 3 tentative maps. The one in front of you is the tentative subdivision map for parcel 1, and it's actually the most detailed of the 3 tentative maps before you, because there's actually a design review and approved development plans for lot 1. This subdivision map includes 1 common area parcel and then 3 initial airspace parcels, 1 for the hotel, 1 for the 12 hotel investment suite units, and then 1 for the retail building on the corner. When it comes back as a final map, it will have, let's see, 14 parcels because those condo units presumably will also be included. Next slide, please. And this slide actually kind of shows how airspace condominiums work. So you can see on the site plan the common areas, and then on the right, each of the levels, it defines which parcel certain areas belong to, with the dark areas on this slide depict the hotel investment suite unit parcels. Next slide, please. So the resolution for approval of the tentative map includes a number of conditions that are carried forward from the original tentative map for this subdivision, as well as a requirement that the tentative map doesn't become effective until the effective date of the 4th DA amendment, which is 30 days after its adoption. And then it also requires that the CCNRs for the subdivision be submitted to the city attorney for review and approval prior to the final map being approved. Next slide, please. So this is the tentative map for lot 2. It shows the boundaries of the parcel, and it identifies the number of units, and that there will be 1 common area parcel. It is pretty general at this point because the lot 2 development is not yet designed, but it does indicate that there will be a common area parcel and then those 62 units. If we move to the next slide, this slide shows that some of the conditions of approval. Again, the tentative map is conditioned on the DA becoming effective, but it also says that the final map needs to be consistent with the design review. So they have to get the design review approval before the final map comes forward. Again, CCNRs required to be submitted to the city attorney for review and approval. And then with lot 2, there are 2 conditions that have to do with the timing of the development of the middle income units on lot 3. So there's one condition that basically says that the design review and building permits for all of the middle income units on lot 3 need to be issued either before or concurrently with the first lot 2 building permit, and that all middle income units on lot 3 need to be completed prior to the first certificate of occupancy on lot 2. Next slide, please. So this is the lot 3 tentative subdivision map, and it basically shows the, one parcel with the 21 market rate units, one parcel for the 21 or 29 middle income units, and one common area parcel. And, when this comes back as a final map, you would expect, if assuming that all those middle income unit parcels will be condominiumized, to have 51 parcels. And if we go to the next slide, this shows just a summary of some of the key conditions for this tentative map. This is where that condition number 25 that includes the provision to limit the amount of an annual increase in the homeowners association dues for the middle income units resides, as well as in the 4th DA amendment. And and again, it requires the design review prior to the final map, and that all of the building permits for these units be issued before or concurrently with the first permit for lot 2. Next slide, please. So this slide just shows the revised special condition number 25, and I'm not going to read it because it's the exact same language that I read that went into the DA. Next slide, please. So the findings for this slide shows the findings for approval of a tentative subdivision map. These were included in the Planning Commission's resolutions recommending that the City Council approve the tentative maps, and they're also included with the facts to support the making of the findings in the City Council's resolutions that are presented for adoption this evening. Next slide, please. In terms of environmental review, the Mill District project relied upon the Central Healdsburg Avenue Plan Environmental Impact Report as its CEQA document. It prepared a separate addendum and CEQA determination, but concluded that there was no need for a subsequent or supplemental environmental impact report. The 4th Amendment and the 3 tentative maps before you this evening would not require an additional CEQA document. They don't effectively change the project or the circumstances under which it would be undertaken. The mitigation monitoring and reporting program that was adopted for the Mill District project would continue to apply to this project with the amendments. Next slide, please. So this slide basically includes the 4 recommended actions with the revisions. So the first is we are recommending that the council introduce the ordinance for the 4th DA amendment this evening. And when you do that, also mention or reference the proposed revisions to section 11 related to the increases in the combined HOA fees. Our second recommendation is for approval of the tentative subdivision map for lot 1. The third is for approval of the tentative subdivision map for lot 2. And the 4th is for approval of the tentative subdivision map for lot 3. Again, with the proposed revisions to condition number 25. So these actions were all recommended by the Planning Commission as well, and as required by law. So that concludes my report. If you have any questions, I would be.
Thank you. That was a very detailed report. I appreciate it. Any questions? Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you. I know that you have been working on this for many years and that it continues to evolve. So appreciate all of the work that you and our staff and city attorney's office have done to bring it to us in this way and kind of shepherding it through the process. A couple questions. So for the middle income housing units, I want to just make sure I understand. It's contemplated that there will be no rentals moving forward, that they will only be for sale condominiums, or it is the option that they may be for sale, but they don't must be for sale.
It is optional. So it allows them to do all 29 of those as ownership units. Under the current DA, they were required to deliver, I think it was 13, but it might have been 14 rental units. And so there is no requirement now for them to provide rental units.
And then the prior iteration, and I think the initial spirit of the goal of having middle income units on this site, that they are no longer going to be dispersed across multiple parcels or within other structures that have the market rate units. It sounds as though all of the middle income units are now being consolidated onto one parcel, and that they will all be consolidated into one building on one parcel, not interdispersed with the market rate units.
I think it's likely that they would be interspersed with the market rate units on that parcel. So there would be 21 market rate units and 29 middle income units. Given the constraints of the parcel and kind of the way that they are developing parking, I think it would be one building. And if you looked at, there's an attachment to the staff report that was the feasibility study that was prepared just to demonstrate that the units would actually fit. It's one building on lot 3. I think the part that was
sorry, it was the tentative map that you talked about where it seemed as though, but maybe it's that they may be in separate buildings or the same building, but that the tentative maps would be similar to what the hotel mapping process would be, that they are categorized separately, even if they're within the same building. Maybe
they on the tentative map, they would be required to identify which parcels were middle income, but they wouldn't necessarily all just be in one area. Each parcel would be individual. However, if they decided to do rental middle income units on lot 3, they could do that, and they could do that either as one parcel, but they've indicated that that would be problematic, or they could condominiumize the rental units.
Understood. And then for the movement of the units that you used to be on lot 5, which no longer has residential, and moving those to lot 2 and 3, but it looks as though lot 2 now has 62 proposed units, market rate. Do you feel confident that that many units can fit with the requirements? Yes, I understand that that feasibility has been discussed, but since we're kind of shifting one unit off of lot 6 that was proposed, that is coming down to 12. And then the units that were on lot 5, which I think is a better use of lot 5 to not have a 4-story tall building right along Healdsburg Avenue. Is it possible to actually fit 62 units on lot 2, given that what we see now with the Canopy project is 43 units across that kind of larger lot 4?
I think it is. And again, I would just direct you to the feasibility study. And also, like, when you look at that, There's a lot of, I mean, they may end up with smaller units. They probably won't have 2-story units like they have in Canopy. But I think that feasibility study demonstrates that it's possible both to get the required parking and to fit that number of units. But it's going to be a design challenge to make it, attractive and to create the products that they're looking for.
Yeah, and I think well, we can discuss when we're not in the Q&A portion, but I think knowing that the mix of the middle income units, the number of bedrooms and, the unit types, that those two parcels are kind of tied to one another from what I understood in the planning commission hearing. That's the part that I want to make sure that it's not, because if it's not feasible to have multiple bedrooms, right? If it ends up being 62 studios, because that's all that fits, that's not really meeting the goal of a mix of housing units for middle income and otherwise. So, and because we don't have a detailed proposal of that mix right now, we're kind of hoping that they fit and hoping that the feasibility is achieved.
I would say it's a little more than hope. And there is, if you look at, again, back to the feasibility study, there is a mix of unit types for lot 3 in that feasibility study, and the provision that's in the DA amendment now that requires that that basically the middle income units have the same mix as the market rate units in terms of bedrooms and stuff. I think you're going to see a mix of units.
Great. Can you tell me, I was looking at the slide regarding the hotel investment suites and actually, let me just ask really quick about the market rate units on lots 2 and 3. So before I go to the hotel. So the way that the GMO cycles work and how this DA has kind of straddled multiple cycles to get the 138 market rate units done, knowing that we are no longer doing the residential units on lot 5 and that one of the units from lot 6 is going to move to the later phase, are we losing GMO allocations that are going to expire without being used, without housing coming to fruition in this current cycle? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I totally got it.
Okay.
I'm gonna pundit our GMO expert here.
Yes, no, they are losing allocations at the end of this cycle that they won't have used, but their development agreement also allows them to capture expiring GMO allocations from projects like Saggio Hills. So they've captured allocations from that. They'll probably capture some unused allocations from the end of this cycle from mostly category A's that haven't been built. And so it's kind of providing a balance. Our hope is that the intent of the DA by allowing that is to try and front load the project so it can be done sooner rather than later. But the short answer, yes, they're losing, but they're also gaining.
Got it. So I think my question generally is if, our goal is that we can only build 30 units of housing every year for 3 years, so 90 units. But if they're this category, it's 20 units, so 60 units over a 3-year period. Are you saying that we can shift them if the individual side, the 10 that are for
Only the
HHC
expiring.
projects? Only if they're expiring. Okay. Because if we, if it's 138 market rate units and you can only build, 30, that's several years out that they're kind of holding on to those allocations, which hence the development agreement that's going to last for 10 plus years. I just worry that if we do have kind of fluctuations in the time horizon, how many how many hopeful homes disappear into the abyss that go poof when we don't meet those time targets, and what does that mean for meeting our overall housing goals for the city? And I think based on your answer, it sounds like some other projects didn't meet their timelines, so some of those are coming in here, but then some of these aren't meeting theirs. So I don't necessarily feel like I have a clear answer about,
There's still a net loss.
do you have a sense of what the net loss is?
I don't off the top of my head. no.
Okay. I
But
would
I
just,
can say that the Mill District has GMO reservations out until the end of 2030.
2030, okay. I think it would just be helpful to understand that, just especially as we in the future may enter into other development agreements with the way the GMO is structured, that if we're trying to achieve our housing mandates from the state, or we're trying to achieve the goals of housing in the community, that we understand what do these agreements mean from an, an operating perspective in terms of how do we actually get homes built for people who need a place to live.
I agree, and that's part of that annual GMO report that we provide. Lets you know how many expired, how many were used, and all of that. So we'll revise that at the end of this year, and it's provided usually in March of each year.
Great. For that HOA fee for the middle income, I think this is a good middle ground in terms of how do you put that limiter on tied to CPI. So we know what those increases might be. How do we know what the initial HOA fee will be? How do we know that when they first establish it, that it will meet the ability for middle income residents in that AMI to be able to afford the HOA? It sounds like they're not going to be able to increase it above the CPI over time, but how do we know that how will it initially be set?
So the initial HOA fee is set by the homeowners associations. It is factored into the affordable sales price, the restricted sales price includes the HOA fees. So, the higher the fees are, the lower the mortgage is. Basically.
And is that tied to the 33%? Is that still
Right.
Some utilities are also included in that number as well?
That's correct.
Okay. So even though the potential increases over time would not have to remain within that 33%, if CPI is through the roof
That's
on 1
correct.
year, it could exceed 33%, but what it initially gets set at would be mortgage, utilities, and all of those things.
Right. What is
Annual income would be the maximum. Is that
right?
accurate?
That's the restricted sales prices, based on the 160% of AMI for the household size.
And are they, the units in that middle income, is it 120 to 160 or it's 160? Are there different levels? Is it a range or it's 160 is the number?
That's a good question. I believe it's 160.
Okay, so the middle income units are not 120 to 160 AMI, they are 160 AMI.
That is my understanding.
I think they could be within that range because that will qualify as middle income. Given the costs, et cetera, I'm sure that they will be geared more towards the higher end of that.
Okay.
Towards the 160.
When they were first contemplated, well, we had 8 units that didn't have a specific income affordability, correct? They were affordable by design, so technically they were market rate. And now we're putting them into this category of having a deed restriction and having income ceilings associated.
Right. Well, the affordable by design units, the initial sale was restricted to an affordable price.
Do you know if it was 160 or was it a range? The initial restriction?
Yeah, it is the same formula in the middle income housing agreement. And what I can do is look it up, but
Okay.
let's
Happy to it. Great, thank you. I think when we first did the citrine apartments, that was associated with Hotel Trio, I think it was contemplated that those units were going to be 80 to 120 in a range. And then what ultimately was decided was that the vast majority, except for 5 units, were actually at 120 AMI, and 5 units or 6 units were at 80% AMI. And so I think just clarifying that it's not actually a range, and that there aren't, like in a normal affordable apartment building, you have different ranges of affordability, that this is really, they're all at the high end at 160, which is potentially still less than market rate, but it's not 120 to 160. And you feel free to look at it when we go to commercial break. Just-
I just found it. It's 160.
Okay. And then just quick on the hotel investment suites. So is there a specific amenity? So confirming the hotel investment suite owners won't have access to the residential amenity building on lot 5. You had already mentioned that the hotel investment suite owners
That's correct.
have access to the hotel amenity. No worries.
Pardon me?
No, it's okay. You
Okay,
feel free.
so the hotel owners, is there a mechanism to enforce it? Was that your question?
The question is there a separate amenity that is exclusive use just for the hotel investment suite owners, separate from the hotel's pool and gym, et cetera?
No.
Okay.
But that presumably is the amenity that they would be using.
Okay. And then for the parking associated with those units, they don't have the ability to like store cars on site. It would just be when people are there staying in their investment suite that they could park in the garage like a hotel use, but
That's
otherwise.
Correct. The planning commission added a condition requiring that.
Great. And then the way that the tentative map for the hotel investment suites was laid out, is it that there's investment suites on the front side of the hotel? Are those kind of at the point of the roundabout? It seemed as though the way that the floor of the hotel was laid out, that there were 2 very large investment suites that are contemplated for each of those floors, and then the remainder were on the top floor that were kind of smaller units. Is that
that's
firm, or is that like a proposal?
That's the developer's proposal.
And so the 2 that seemingly are the larger units that are on, I don't know, I'm guessing the 2nd and 3rd floors at a 4-story building?
Yeah. So they're on the 3rd and the 4th floor, I think. Maybe it's 2nd and 3rd. 2nd and 3rd. Okay.
Can you talk a little bit about why those are so much, or maybe we can ask the developer why they're so much larger than the other ones, or what is contemplated for those uses?
I think that's a question for the developer, but I do believe that that what's shown on the maps includes large patios outside of them too. So.
You want me to come to that?
If that's okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Mayor Higley, commissioners, or council members, excuse me. Part of it's a function of the location and the architecture. At the top has 8 or 9 alike, as you observed. And then there are actually 3 that are on top of each other, and they, working with the exterior and trying to sculpt it in a way that was pleasing, they became just a little bit bigger, but they're not going to function any differently. They're 2-bedroom suites and just slightly larger living rooms and slightly larger outdoor space.
What are the size of those units?
I think the typical is 1,350 and the bigger ones are 1,600.
And then there's like an outdoor patio that's associated with the ones on the roundabout?
Right, and the smaller on top and a little bit larger as you go down to create a sculpting that we and the planning commission thought was appropriate.
It's really beautiful, the view from the roundabout towards the hotel. I think that was a great improvement that you guys made from the last design review.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was the only question I had for the hotel investment suites. Is it contemplated, I cannot, well, I don't want to, they seem to be negotiating. It's okay. For the investment suites, is it proposed that they will be individual owners for each of the 12? Or is it proposed that there might be one entity that purchases all of them? Have you thought through that, or?
No, I mean, we want to have, I mean, if they're all individually owned, that'd be great. You know, if somebody wants to buy a couple, that would be great. There's a provision that prevents an owner that owns multiple to have more than one benefit. So
Yeah.
there's a provision that discourages purchasing more than one, but it's not prohibited.
Yeah, they basically revert to just hotel units.
Oh, if the hotel
If there's,
developer operator purchases that.
if there's more than
sorry,
one,
yeah.
you don't get to use it like a hotel. If
Really an
if
investment.
one owner owns more than one unit, they only get to use one unit as a hotel investment suite for those 90 days. And any other unit that they own needs to be operated as a regular hotel unit.
So if I bought 2 of them and I wanted to use them for 180 days, I couldn't. I
Nope.
could buy 2 of them, but I can only use 1 of them for a maximum of 90 days.
Exactly. And the other one would just be required to be in the hotel pool all the time. I mean, you could buy it as an investment.
Right.
But
How does it work mechanically if someone wants to, it's a condo, a commercial condo, if someone wants to sell it? You buy it as an investment and then at some point in time you want to sell it. How does it function?
Hire a broker and you put it on the market and you sell it.
And the deed has all of the restrictions recorded on it. So I mean, I don't know the mechanics of how you would do it relative to the hotel owner who's operating it. But all of the city's requirements are recorded on each individual deed.
Has Replay done this type of hotel investment suite in the past?
I believe we have as Replay, we certainly have as IntraWest. Most of our partners worked at InterWest, and the white paper that we provided that I believe was included in the package, describes our experience. And
any challenges with those other projects when people have wanted to sell the commercial?
not that I'm aware of. No, it's I think you sell it much.
Okay. And then just my last question, for the 20 conditions of approval that aren't technically conditions of approval, but the language that's associated with the hotel investment suite, what's the remedy for the city if the hotel operator, who's the hotel operator in this instance? Is it Replay?
It's Replay and a partnership with my Myakama team.
So if the conditions are not followed, what's the city's remedy for invocate, like what happens if they say, you said 90 days, but one of our owners wants to be here for 6 months, too bad. What's the city's remedy?
I'm gonna punt that one to your city attorney. I think it's like with any other code violation.
Yeah,
Basically.
it would be a code enforcement action. And it'd be where does it live?
So it lives in the CCNRs, and the city is a party to the CCNRs and has the ability to enforce them. It also lives in the conditional use
Right.
permit for the
So it'd be a
hotel.
violation of the condition.
Yeah.
It would be a violation of the condition, and I mean, this would be extreme, but one of the remedies for a violation of the condition is to pull the permit on which the condition is placed. So it would be, I mean, I guess we can pull a tentative map, but we would probably approach it through code enforcement then. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Harrod, and then we'll come to Councilmember Edwards, Vice Mayor, and then if there's no questions left, then I'll be quiet.
At the beginning of your presentation, which by the way was really excellent, thank you for breaking it down the way you did. It was helpful to everybody, I think. You framed it by saying, by explaining why DA is necessary and helpful, and you said that it was unusual to have so many changes along the road, as we've seen in this case, and you also said there might be others in the future. And I'm just wondering why that's the case with this project and not other projects, and what kind of challenges have, were there at the beginning perhaps that have led down this sort of rocky road?
So thank you for that question and for maybe an opportunity to clarify what I said, because what I said is it's not unusual. So
Not
sorry,
unusual.
that's like a double negative.
Okay.
The need to go in and modify that agreement over time. And that's like what I pointed out with the Montage project. The city did 4 amendments to that development agreement, North Village, 4 amendments. This is the first major amendment to this development agreement, but there've been 3 minor ones already. And what I would say with this project that I think makes it like kind of most susceptible to needing to have modifications over time is that the way it was approved and conceived of is a phased development project over the course of 15 years. And the phasing was in part due to the GMOs. But it's already, as time goes on, conditions change. The timing of the project, I think they've seen market conditions change. They've endured the pandemic, the supply chain issues. They've learned different things about the market and the project as time goes on.
That's an interesting answer, and thank you for that. As an outsider to not having been a part of this at the beginning of this particular project or anyone like it, it seems a little surprising that such big changes happen midstream. And I think you explained how this is supposed to be kind of evolve over time. But so initially, when the first plan was scrutinized by the public, by the city council at the time, there was an understanding that this is our starting place, but we're going to be probably doing something different along the road as we proceed. Is that right?
I don't know that that was like the initial understanding, but I think that's just, how it has evolved over time. And I can really just point to the other 2 major development projects in Healdsburg and say that, there's been a need to modify their development agreements over time as well. So
It's a reasonable comparison. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you said, well, there probably will be others. Do we have any way of forecasting what those might be?
I
Not really. Yeah, because it's
It would
a
get
long time frame, right?
speculative at this point.
Okay. Then I think you said something about the terms of the agreement were for 15 years. Was that just part of it, or did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so the development agreement has a 15-year term. So it was entered into in 2019. It expires unless it's extended by mutual agreement of both parties. It will expire in, what's that, 2019 plus 15.
Yeah.
34.
And what happens at that point? It's the agreements expire.
I mean, hopefully by then the project will be done.
Some of these agreements will have ramifications after it's done, though, when we're talking about, certain people using the amenities and so on. So
Yeah, so
does
those-
everything go into the wind at that point, or?
No, it actually, those kinds of agreements actually get embedded in other land use approvals.
Mhm.
So, that's why there are conditions of the tentative map, there are conditional use permits. There are, other approvals that there are CCNRs that the city will be a party of. So there's kind of ongoing conditions once they.
Okay, thank you. I have a few other questions, but I think they're particular to some of the other steps that we'll be going through, so I'll hold off on those for now.
All right, Councilmember Edwards.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back to just real quick, the code enforcement aspect of an overstay. Are we talking a fine, or what are we, I wanted to know what the real world ramifications would be.
There's procedures in community code for dealing with code enforcement. And there are a couple different options. One is a fine. One is it can be prosecuted as a criminal violation. And usually we make that decision depending on the actual violation. So I don't know which path we would choose. Likely it would be a fine. And then if it continued to get worse, we would graduate the remedies.
So we could escalate it so that it's not just paying an additional tax.
Yes. Yes.
Good. I want to keep this on kind of the level that if I just dropped in to watch this meeting, I haven't spent 5 hours going over this package, that the general public can understand what's going on. So I'll start with the hotel. So these are just suites. So in other words, one key, multiple rooms, no kitchen facility in that, kitchenette, no barbecue outside. So we're assuming that if they were to stay for 30 days, they would be going to restaurants or going to friends' homes where they would be dining and getting takeout.
I think they have kitchenettes.
There are kitchens, no barbecues.
Okay, so in the kitchenette, that will be, the equipment will be provided by the hotel, similar to each suite, or will the owners be picking out that kitchen appliances, utensils?
There's a requirement for the suites all to be similarly
Okay.
decorated.
And then is there like a storage unit for the owners that if they wanted to have clothes and didn't want to have to pack a suitcase every time, that would be off the room site, or they would have to come in with a suitcase every time?
You cannot have storage within the suite.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they could
You
have.
can't have personal storage within the suite.
Okay, so they'd have to have off-site something, they could rent a storage unit and have their things there. If they didn't want to drag everything each time. Okay. Going into the HOA fees. Are we talking two fees? There's an HOA fee and then an amenity fee, or is this all now one fee?
So the way they have it structured now is there's a master association that takes care of the grounds and the park. And then each of the buildings has, like, there's an HOA, there would be like an HOA for the Lot 3 building that would be the fees for the repair and maintenance of that actual structure, and that's separate. So each of the, like Lot 4, which has, this underground parking garage, like their HOA fees encompass the development on Lot 4. And then they have a separate fee for the residential amenity. And so that's why we've kind of lumped them all together and called them out very explicitly and coined a new term that's the, combined HOA fees, and made it clear that that's what we're talking about in terms of defining, what is capped, what is included in the calculation of affordable housing costs and so forth.
Because one of the things I'm concerned about in this is, like at the Randall, they have a recreation room where if you wanted to have a birthday party or something, that's there. And in these units, if somebody is really desperately trying to live and work in Healdsburg, and they can swing the HOA fee, but they can't swing the amenities buildings fee, Is there a way that that would be able to be rented, or would they have to go through kind of a sideways method of talking to someone who's there that's a member and then have them as a guest? I mean, I'd like to understand how that would clearly work ahead of time.
Yeah, the way it is structured now is that it is not an opt-in and opt-out fee, that all middle income homeowners would have access to the facility and they would be required to pay the fee.
Okay, so those would all be calculated. And then does this does contain, since they are for sale, I don't know if our local preference applies to that, or it's just a first come, first.
It does. No, the local preference is included in your DA.
Okay, now I'd like to get down to some real numbers on this, because when we're talking AMI, I know what it is, but I'm wondering, when people are listening to this, what that means. So I'm thinking, the difference between middle income and market rate. Are we talking that like a firefighter and a school teacher couple at 175,000 a year would roughly qualify for a $1 million loan? Is that where we're looking at that range? Where does the middle income versus market rate vary? And if we're just talking today, I know we don't know what it's going to be a year or 2 years from now, but a hypothetical of what today would look like.
So hypothetically, and this is really general, we would be talking with a household of, let's just say, a 4-person household, 2 professionals and a couple of kids. In a 2-bedroom unit, the affordable sales, so the total housing costs that a family earning, let's say 160% of AMI is, we're talking maybe 100
For a family of 4, it's 221,000 a year.
Yeah, so you're talking probably close to 700,000 in the affordable
Okay,
sales price.
then market rate would be around.
But understand that the HOA fees,
Okay, and then I guess it's up to the purchaser to know about programs for down payment assistance, or is that something that the developer is going to have a sales office that would help people qualify?
I can't respond to that. but-
All right. That's going to do it for me for right now. I just wanted to get some clarification. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Go back. So I just have a couple questions, and thank you for that presentation, because I've spent many hours, as my fellow council members have, looking at this and trying to understand it all. And I actually followed your presentation throughout, so that's a good sign. So thank you for that. I just had a couple of questions. So I just want to confirm that this amendment on this DA has the same number of units, the same number of the same affordability, the same number of hotel keys as the original?
That is
DA.
correct.
Okay. So we're not adding, we're not subtracting. We are changing the 29 units, though, to be for sale, potentially.
That's correct.
The middle income, which is great, because that's a product that we don't have, and many people ask for the ability to buy something. And even though, your equity would be restricted to some degree, you still can build some equity, right? And so I'm pleased at that, because that's a goal that the city has, of course, with the mixed product. And you just went kind of over how the sales price is determined. So that was one of my questions. Local preference, sorry, Mayor Hagley, but the local preference is not only related to the middle income, it's also related to, I thought I read about retail. Some of the retail spaces would apply some local preference to those as well, or did I not?
That actually is included in the DA.
Okay.
So I don't know that it's in your local preference ordinance, but the DA has.
In the DA, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
and
it's
that's
still-
in the existing.
Yeah. And it's not all retail, it's a piece of the retail that would apply to? Because I think there's like 15,000 square feet of retail that we're talking about?
Yeah, I would have to pull out the DA.
Okay.
That language. I will say that I don't think at the end of the day, you're going to see 15,000 square feet of retail in this project.
Okay, that's a lot, I
Yeah,
gather. Okay. And so then, the planning commission is the one who kind of, flagged the question about the amenity building and the middle income units having that accessible to them. So, so that's how all of that conversation developed. And you now come to a new conclusion of how to do this, the, increase in the cost for that on the HOA stuff. So and everybody is comfortable with that, including the developer? I know there was some questions.
right. I think with the change to linking it to the CPI, that the developer is okay with it.
Okay, okay. Yeah, and really, these are Measure P units, aren't they? That got voted in a couple of years ago. So it'll be good to see those get built and see how they work. See if we can do more of that product in the future and maybe even enhance it a little bit with income restriction removed. And the park. So I just wanted to kind of recap on that. So the park's a little bit bigger now because we're removing one of the buildings, and it's privately owned and maintained. The city is not required to maintain that park. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, but we use it. We can use it.
Right, right. The city has a public access easement over the park
Okay.
in perpetuity.
Okay. And let me see. So you talked about, yeah, so the restriction on the purchase of the residential units at the hotel. So that was a really important piece, I think, too, because there was some questions, I think, at the planning commission about what if someone had, 3 or 4, they could sort of suck up all the days of private use, but that is not the case. So can I assume also then that it would be a deterrent to some degree for people to buy more than one unit because they're not going to get the use of it other than it's just an investment in the hotel?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you read the condo hotel white paper that the developer submitted,
get to
like
that yet.
it is primarily an investment. And you know what that white paper said, that is in a lot of these circumstances, people don't even come close to using 90 days. I mean, I think it said the average of the hotels or the condo hotels that it was doing, that was like 10 days or something a year for an owner to use them.
So it's really an investment is what people are looking at it for, and a mechanism to finance the hotel so it can actually get built too,
Yeah.
right?
Well, potentially. I mean, I don't know who their investors are.
Yeah.
Spending 90 days in Healdsburg sounds delightful. But, yeah.
And so just one last question. So the payment in lieu of the transit occupancy tax, the calculation for that, and it's embedded in the agreement. Is everybody comfortable with the fact that the city will remain whole on that one? Is there any concern at all that could be a problem?
Sure, I'll take a stab at that. General answer is yes. As Linda mentioned, that approach does rely on a couple of assumptions. Not quite 2 to 1, but it's close. And then there's also an assumption that suites have higher vacancy, and that's borne out by data in other projects. I think it was 75% of the ratio of vacancy is what we had in there. So we use 2 assumptions, and well, just own that, right? That an assumption is not a perfect mechanism. But I think both are reasonable, and I think both get us to a point where we're comfortable that might be a little high, it might be a little low. But we think it's close. And as we ran a lot of different numerical scenarios, you get to the point where we looked at, and we talked about a lot of mechanisms to do this. Some that are a little bit more finely tuned could result in a whole lot of administration and oversight over what we ultimately calculated was very small dollar amounts. So that's the longer answer, but we do think this will capture what we've lost in terms of usage. And if the usage isn't very high, then that's easy because there's no true up required. But we think it will get us there. It might do a little better, it might do a little worse, but we also think we can implement it, which is important.
Thank you. It sounds like a good compromise on how to deal with that. And those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly?
Thanks. One of Vice Mayor Mitchell's questions prompted another mix of 4 million units. So there used to be these affordable by design units that didn't have the same deed restriction. It had a entry restriction on, you had to be income qualified at the 160% AMI, but then you could have as much equity in it as you want. And then when you sell it, you could sell it to anyone. Is that right? In terms of how that formally
Actually, I
was
think
contemplated
at
or
the
no?
first sale, there was a chunk of money that would go back to the city. So you didn't, the initial owner didn't capture all the equity. There was a limitation on that, and the excess went back to the city's housing trust fund or whatever you have.
And those were initially counted though in the middle income unit mix.
They were, even though they weren't necessarily going to remain middle income units, depending on the tenancy of the initial buyers.
Okay. And then so basically those no longer exist as kind of this unique product in the mix. And those 8, I think it's 8, are now just a part of the 29 remaining middle income to be built.
Right, of the ownership, middle income units that would retain their, I mean, they have 45-year restrictive covenants, but those restrictive covenants renew every time a new purchaser comes on. So in effect, unless somebody stays in it for 45 years, they will remain affordable in perpetuity.
And if it's like a bequest, it automatically resets to the 45-year. Another 45. So grandpa buys the unit, he lives in it for 20 years, he passes away, he gives it to his child. Does that reset at a new 45 years? Or if that person stays 25 years, it's free and clear of that restriction?
I don't know if it resets or not. I don't know the answer to that.
Thanks.
All right, I only have a couple. One clarification, I do want to note that the nice thing with the income restricted units that are the 120 to 160 is that once you're in there and you purchase a unit, if you win the lottery, you don't have to move. Like the income restricted units that, are 120% AMI and under that have a restriction. If your income goes up, every year you got to qualify. So that's where it's really attracted to have these middle income units. That's really nice. And for context, the Foss Creek condos are, I think you said these were kind of going to be around 700,000. So the Foss Creek condos, those are selling, I think, in the 600,000 to 700,000 range for a little context. Couple questions. On the mine are really related to the investment suite. So so we're approving the investment suites with a 5-year time frame, correct, for the hotel? And if next month the partner says, oh, it's not going to work, I guess my question is, do you have somebody else that could step in to do this concept, or is it one and done with the one partner that you're working with?
We would find another partner easily.
Okay.
Yeah, this isn't a one and done.
That's good to know. And then let's see. The second part is, say you go to the second, third potential partner, it doesn't work, and then before the 5 years is up, it turns out the market's shifted and a 53-room hotel would work better. Can they do that sooner?
Absolutely.
So that option is always open. All we're doing is doing an overlay for the 5 years for an investment suite. If that doesn't work within the 5 years, the hotel is still there. If they decide these terms don't work with the investment partner, they can revert back to the hotel. Okay.
That's correct.
That's all I had. So with that, I'll open it to the public. Anybody, any members of the public have any comments on this? Going once. Twice. All right. We'll bring it back to council for discussion and action. I think one thing I do want to say, I don't have anything prepared, but I remember approving this project back in 2019. We both were here. In fact, I think I was sitting in this chair, and it was the week after, or the meeting after, we had a packed house with people begging us to do something about housing. There were tears. I mean, it was tears from me too, just because as we were approving it, it really struck me how we had structured this development agreement for the affordable housing to be done first. There were a lot of community amenities. You saw the list of what's already, benefited the community, whether it's the ladder truck, the expanded park. Every time I drive past that park, I remember comments we made about just the design of the park and how it's not a traditional like swings and, you're climbing on some natural looking structures, which, my kids are too big for that now, but at the time, that was like, if that was there back then, my kids would have been all over it. So there's a lot that as I drive by, I really like, and especially driving past the Randall and, people call those, income restricted units or whatever, but those are homes and people are living there. And, we all went to the ribbon cutting and met some of the residents. And when I drive by and I see it, it feels good to know that we have our local preference and those people that are living and working have some connection to Healdsburg that are in there. But I think it's important to remember the context from 2019. You mentioned, toward the end of the year, we had the fires and we had COVID and everything else. And so it doesn't, bother me to have changes to development agreements, especially one that's, stretched over such a long time. So I would expect that. The one thing that I do appreciate is, and I think, it's very clear, I hope, hopefully clear to the developer, is that we don't like going back on units. We didn't on the North Village. That came back. There's an amendment that wanted to reduce and we kind of shuffled things around, but we made it work. And so I think in the context of that, I really commend staff on what you did following the planning commission to try to get to something that's presentable here to us. And so that I just wanted to kind of share that part, and I'd like to open it up for discussion at this point. I'd maybe start with Councilmember Herod. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I do want to acknowledge that that the commitment to housing and to maintaining the kind of affordability that we were going to expect with the middle income housing here. You might be called upper middle, but it is what it is, and it capping the HOA fees and working towards that agreement is something that I really appreciate for all parties coming to that conclusion. I think that's really important that it just demonstrates the commitment we have to maintaining a certain promise of affordability within that particular bracket. So that was important for me to see happen, and it sounded like it was sort of the last minute thing, but it just shows that there was a drive to get that done, and so thank you for that. I'm okay with the middle income units being for sale too. I think that also is sits in the light of what we understand as being an important need in our community right now. So that's a change that I feel comfortable with. I do want to share that it's been worrisome for me to see the investment suites arise, because I just worry that we have a real lock on the promise of TOT to our community. And now it sounds to me like you've done a lot of work and made a very detailed plan to make sure that that's the case. So thank you for that. That's super important. But the fact that it's, come along sort of last minute, at least in, my perspective, and I kind of touched on this in my earlier comments, is, I hate to see that there's some way that this could evolve or change over time, maybe over a lot of time, where we would lose a grasp on that. And part of that is, frankly, because of the hotel operators having kind of run up against our planning department and our usage rules in another property in the city. And there's a lawsuit there. And so it's something that I think we have to be really vigilant to watch over time, maybe decades, but that concerns me. And I wish that wasn't necessary, frankly. It sounds like this was an important financing tool for the developers, but so I have to respect that. But, initially it was just a hotel with regular rooms, TOT income, cut and dry. And now we don't have that anymore. And so like I said, I'm going to trust that the work is done and it's in the DA now. But I just wanted to make sure that I voiced that concern. Okay. I did have a question about the Quimby Act funds that we said goodbye to a retail component by the park, and the park was expanded. And now we're not getting a certain Quimby Act payment, if you will, on that. Do we know how much that was going to be?
I mean, I'm going to do this off the top of my head, so it's not going to be precise. But basically, the stormwater basin encroachment into the park, I believe it was the amount of fees somewhere in there. And what you got in return for the waiver of those fees is that 3,500-foot module, but then you have to subtract a little bit because approached with the amenity building into the park. So while the net gain is 2,100 feet or 2,200, somewhere in there, actually the usability of the park is, I would say, enhanced way beyond that.
I agree. I think it's a big improvement.
500 square foot commercial building.
Yeah, I remember when we were on the Parks Commission looking at the site and imagining that building that didn't feel right, but at the time I wasn't really considering that aspect of it. But do we know how large the retail units are going to be now? Or now that they're part of the amenities building, or maybe they've always been, but it seems to me like they got a little bit of a squeeze in that change. Are we talking about really small shops, or do we have an idea of the square footage of those shops facing Healdsburg Avenue?
Yeah, in the amenity building, there are two defined spaces. One of them can be subdivided, but the larger one's around 2,000 square feet. The one that is to the south that faces the park that has the additional patio is a small 500 square foot space, but with the patio, we feel like it's going to be very attractive and live large.
Mm-hmm. And how many commercial retail spaces are there in total? Because there's a few built into the hotel building too, right?
Well, the restaurant and the bar are part of the hotel along Healdsburg Avenue. So they'll be operated by the hotel. They'll feel like a retail space, but they're not for lease. At the corner of Sawmill on Lot 1, there's 1,700 square feet that we haven't cast that yet, but it seems like a small grocer would be a good use there. And then there's one that's the furthest south, which is on lot 6, and that's 1,500 square feet. So all in, the retail is going to be less than 10,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then I just have one other comment to make, and it's kind of an aside, and maybe this is really a done deal, so apologies if this is stepping out too much, but I had kind of had the impression at one point, and this may have been naive, that the street names were kind of placeholders, and that at some point that the street naming might go through the normal process that we would have for another street in the city. Same with the park. Are those names set in stone, or is there a possibility that we have an opportunity with some new streets to do something interesting with those naming processes?
These streets they're named. There are people actually living in Canopy who have addresses of 131 Sawmill. Like,
That answers
it's
that,
done.
okay. Alrighty, thank you.
And if I recall at the time, part of it was to kind of acknowledge the history of what was there before. That's where all the names came from.
One of them is South Street, though.
Oh, well.
Okay, I'm not gonna complain.
Councilmember Edwards?
Yeah, I'm really happy that we have clarified the fees so that this is kind of a mixed community and there's not a separation of one group from another for the amenities building, because that was very important for me to keep that aspect, to make it a vibrant community, which is nice to see on that one. I am a little concerned, or still have a question on the suites. That and how that actually works. Is it kind of like a boat or a yacht that you would lease out so that when the owner isn't there, they would still be receiving income? Or it's just they purchase it and the only income, or they would only have unrealized gains until the unit was sold and get the equity at that point? Was that how
I'm
that?
gonna let Mike talk to that.
Yeah, when it's not occupied by the investor, it goes into the hotel pool, and then there's a revenue share.
Okay.
That the investor gets. And that percentage hasn't been worked out yet.
Okay, so all the investors in those suites would then split some amount between them.
Right.
Figure that out.
Right.
Okay. All right, yeah, that's it. It's a nice, I think it's really coming together. It's been a long process, complicated process, but I hope that through tonight, we've answered a lot of the public's questions on what the affordability is, how the mix is, and hopefully we'll get people here in town will be able to walk to work. And I think this is a good opportunity because, as Mayor Hegley said, is that we are really short on for sale units in town, because really the only way a family is going to start building equity is through ownership. And this is a good opportunity to help some of our professional couples. So I think it's a good project.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I feel comfortable with this amendment. To me, it seems a lot more technical in nature than substantive. So although I realize there are some, like the income suites and so on are a little bit out of the norm for us, but I am also really pleased about the 29 units that are going to be proposed for sale in the project. I think it really is going to help us achieve our goals of mixed product within the community. And even though some of the equity the equity will be capped as a result, there still will be some equity. And as Mayor Hagley even pointed out, people can't get booted out if they get a raise or whatever, if they're buying these units. So it just solves a lot of the concerns about that. And dare I point out that the current ballot measure that we're trying to get going is one step further to creating these types of units and taking away the burden of that. So I would hope that maybe somewhere down the road, we'll be able to see that. We're getting a bigger park that we don't have to maintain. I guess we were always getting that, but not the bigger one. So I really appreciate that, because that really helps with the city's costs of maintaining parks that we have so many in our community. And so the rules that the city has worked on negotiating this agreement with the income suites, with the TOT, with the middle income units for sale, I think are all really, really positive for the city and for our community to get some of that different kind of housing. And so I think overall, I think this is really good, a good compromise, and I would support all of it.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly?
Thank you. So I think with respect to, some of the comments, I echo the Vice Mayor's comments regarding some of the community benefits that the city's receiving on this project. I just, also would like to point out that, yes, we did receive funds for a new fire truck, but we wouldn't have needed the fire truck but for the height of these buildings. So some of these amenities were also called for because of the way we need to conduct services for these buildings. But I do think the connectivity funds and the Quimby Act funds will be beneficial for the city, now and into the future. So, and I think the park and having the visibility from Healdsburg Avenue and not having a building kind of blocking it makes a ton of sense. The part that I'm having, I also just kind of wanted to reflect that I do think that the amenity building is exclusive because we have 41 families living in the Randall who do not have access to either of the 2 swimming pools that are going to be built within the Mill District. They do not have access to either of the 2 gym facilities or otherwise. And so I just wanted to clarify that, yes, the middle income units will have access to the amenity building, but the affordable apartments will not. I also, I think when we contemplated the development of this income range within the Mill District on the whole, yes, we knew that there were going to be much more market rate units, 138 compared to the 30 middle income units. I think when we contemplated what did those quote unquote measure, first they were Measure C units because they were for rent, and then they became Measure P units when we passed Measure P for them to be for sale for that middle income category. I think a lot of folks in the community, at least I did, think that it was a range of incomes from 120 to 160 AMI. And I just heard Mayor Hagley say 120 to 160 AMI range. And from what I'm hearing tonight, even though we're not approving those units tonight because we are effectively shifting those units that would have been built on Lot 5 in this timeframe, we're pushing that further into the future and having those happen with Lot 2 and Lot 3 when those get developed someday. And hopefully that's someday soon, but we don't know. That we're really saying that those are in fact now firmly 160 AMI units, not 120 to 160. And I think just for context, that's the difference between one person who would make $108,000 as income at 120 AMI, 160 AMI is $155,000. And as you get more people in that household, it goes from 120 AMI is $154,000 a year. 160 AMI is $221,000 a year. So that range is pretty, the more people in your household, the bigger that spread gets. And so I know we're not approving those units tonight. We are effectively allowing the developer more time and pushing them into the future. My request would be that when we do see those middle income units come back to us in some context, that we're really hopefully going to see a range of incomes, because I think we have 40 units at the Randall that are for, very low income and moderate incomes. And those families are thoroughly enjoying living there, and no negative commentary on that. But there is a huge jump from the highest end units there at the probably, I think there maybe is an 80% AMI unit, or they're all 65 and below. I don't recall, but it's well below 80. And the average is well below that. There's a huge gap between that and 160% AMI. In fact, it is a massive gap, and it is the big gap of the income inequality that exists in our community. And so for this project, I'm not asking the Mill District to solve all the housing issues that exist in Healdsburg, but I think when we approved this massive development, thinking it was going to be hotel, commercial, low income, moderate income, and market rate, I think we thought the moderate was actually going to be a range of incomes, and now it is seemingly not going to be when that comes back to us in the future. So I just wanted to put that out there, that as those future conversations evolve and as the developer is looking at how do we figure out the remaining 112 units that have yet to be, the sausage has not yet been made on those, it would be wonderful to actually see a broader range of incomes there, that is not just all of them at the highest level at 160 AMI for those moderate units. I also just want to reflect on the conversations we're having around the hotel. And, you know, I think when this project was first being discussed in Healdsburg, we were on the cusp of we had just done this polling of our community around people's feelings around tourism and the number of hotel rooms, and there was this whole conversation happening about what number of hotel rooms is too many for a city of our size. And there was a conversation about, do we do hotel rooms per capita? How do we measure it to know when we say enough is enough? And I think there's also a market conversation that happens where hotel developers are looking at what has been approved and they're trying to figure out what's actually financially viable for their investment given where we're at in the amount of hotel rooms we've built. And I just want to reflect back to 2018, which is, 6 years ago. But it's like a lifetime ago when you think about where we were with hotel development in the city. So Hotel Trio had just opened, Montage had not yet opened, Single Threads 5 rooms had not yet opened, and Harmon Guest House had not yet opened. So that is 280 hotel rooms that have opened since then. And then we still have the Appalachian Hotel, which is 108 more rooms that are vertical now and opening this year or next. We have the Hotel Healdsburg Residences project, which is 16 more hotel rooms, and the Duchamp expansion, which is 14 more rooms, plus these 53 rooms that were approved in 2019. And now here we are trying to find the funding for this developer to build them. That's 471 hotel rooms, including this one, permitted since 2018, out of a total of 850 hotel rooms in Healdsburg, including the 471. So we have more than doubled where we were to having 850 rooms with this one included. And I think their inability to finance this hotel without this unique product type, maybe it's not unique in the world because I understand you have done it before, but definitely unique to Healdsburg and potentially setting a new precedent in Healdsburg for having individual ownership suites of hotel rooms in our town. It makes me wonder, is the market telling us we've built too many hotel rooms? Maybe it's a product of, yes, interest rates are high and construction costs are high, and it is a difficult environment to build and sell in. But I do think it is a signal to the market of where we're at with respect to the quantity of hotel rooms that we've built since 2018 in this town. And it does give me pause to say that, we're moving forward with these 53 rooms, which the city committed to back in 2019 when this DA was signed. But having an additional 471 rooms when this hotel is done, where compared to where we were, and knowing that we now, at that point in time, we'll have 850 hotel rooms, that's a huge change in 6 years' time. So I think knowing that context and knowing that we're being asked to change the way that this is financed and having kind of putting trust, I think frankly, most people in Healdsburg would say we don't really need 53 more rooms at this moment. We're not like, at some point, you meet other people at these city conferences and there's people who are like, we just really want a hotel. Katati, they're so excited. They're getting their first hotel and they're like so enthusiastic about it. Most people in Healdsburg are not actively saying, gosh, I really hope we get just one more hotel. And so I think, to put it mildly, and so I think, in that context, and the fact that we have a hotel operator that's being brought in who wants to be, have an equity stake in this project with Mayakama, and they're suing us over something else at the same time, they're asking us to take a leap of faith that we're doing something new here with them. And we know that the city staff has taken painstaking efforts to solidify this agreement so that the TOT that's, at a basic level, we know how TOT operates. People stay in hotel rooms, they pay the rate, we get the TOT based on the room nights. And this is a different type of agreement. We're getting payments in lieu of those taxes. And that's the community benefit that we say, that's why we're agreeing to allow another hotel, is because there's this benefit of that tax. It's worrisome, and because I think we're taking a leap of faith with an entity that we're in active litigation with. And so it gives me great pause and heartburn around that particular piece, because we're being asked to kind of give on something that we have to put a lot of trust in, that it's going to yield the same return. And I'm not totally certain. I feel like it's going to turn out the way we all hope it does. It's kind of like when you go into a marriage, you hope everything works out well, but sometimes, things fall apart. And so we're taking a leap of faith here in the partnership with Mill District, and we've had a long relationship thus far with the folks from Replay. But I have some really, I have heartburn around what's being contemplated here. And I just feel like I had to say that clearly on the record, because I think the mix of what's happening, delaying those middle income units, knowing that there's going to be nothing at the 120 to 160 level, it's all 160. We will get them in a few years. And then what's happening with the hotel. I want to see that hotel move forward, because I don't want there to be an empty lot right on the roundabout at a central entry point to town. And I think architecturally it is a very attractive building, but I am concerned about what happens on the 20 pieces of the leap of faith that we're taking, and the things that they must, are required to follow through on. And I think I want to just, ask the city manager, do you feel like we have enough safeguards in place on this investment suite side so that we will be getting the same benefit as the city for whether it's the TOT or other, the payments in lieu of TOT, knowing where things stand right now with this overall project?
Yeah, fair question. I think we spoke to the TOT before, but I'll say it clearly. I think we have an arrangement that will make us whole on TOT as a result of this investment suite mechanism. So yes, on that piece, I think to the rest of the question, I think we have the right conditions in place to enforce this operating the way we intend for it to operate, in the way that's been conveyed to all of you right now. Obviously, we've gotten a couple of questions tonight about what does that enforcement look like. And I'll say, while I strongly think we have the right clauses and we have the right tools to enforce it, I think I share the sentiment of the whole council that I hope desperately we don't need to use any of those tools. But we have the enforcement tools if we need them. So I do feel confident in that.
Thanks.
All right. Couple things I wanted to just kind of clarify. So when this project first came before us and we were having discussions, one of the we wanted all the units kind of mixed together. The low income, middle income, the market rate kind of all mixed together, which is ideal. We kind of look at that's some of the favorite streets that people love have a nice big house next to an eightplex apartments. That's what we want. But the reality was it's tough to do that when you're looking at the income restricted units that are subject to low income the tax credit financing to be able to do it. So it has to be all on one site. I remember that specifically having that discussion here when it was being proposed was a frustration of mine, but it's how you get the units built. And so to your point about the amenities, the affordable, the income restricted units kind of being separate, part of that is it's a different property owner. That's Eden Housing. That's not Replay. And this is a Replay project that we're kind of looking at. So, well, it'd be nice. However, it makes sense that, that is a separate parcel, separate owners. So to me, it does make sense that for the Replay project, what we're working on here, and I think what staff has been able to negotiate with the developer is something that is very equitable within the replay project itself. I like the fact that the amenity building is separate from the hotel property. It's across the street. I like that the park has been expanded. That to me, I think as I drive by, it's not open space, but it is. You know, the redwood trees are gorgeous. They've been there forever. I like just the landscaping, how everything's been done there. And I think it also helps with the DA really speaks to the restrictions on the investment suites being able to have access to that amenity building. I completely agree. They should not. That is for the residents. And the investment suites, I don't have quite the same concerns. I think at the end of the day, you know, we're looking to replay as, you know, the owner of the property, and that's who our development agreement is with. And investment suites happen at, you know, up in North Star and everywhere. They happen a lot of different places. And so I'm open to creative ways to look at this. My first concern, shared with the city manager, I think we all had the exact same concern, was we're going to lose out on the TOT, because to your point, that is kind of the, you know, to make up for the hotels that come with some of these projects. And to lose that TOT is not something that I would be interested in, because that really does benefit our community in so many ways. And so the structure that staff negotiated, I think is very good. Well, I shouldn't say very good. I think it's very appropriate for what we have here, compared to, you know, like the Montage arrangement up there. I think this is what's structured here. I think it helps the developer get the property built. And I'm comfortable with the arrangements that's there. So I'd be happy to entertain a motion at this time.
So I'd move that we introduce for first,
Actually, we need to add something, correct?
yeah, I have
You
it.
have the new, oh, you have the.
I have the new one. So, yeah, introduce for, am I allowed to proceed here? What are we waiting for?
Let me read the changes into the record, okay? So, let me find all my papers. Okay. So one of the changes will be to the Fourth Amendment to the Development Agreement, Section 11, 5.9. At the end of the section that's being added now, we will add the following language. The CCNRs for the Master Association and for the Lot 3 Sub-Association shall include a provision to limit the amount of an annual increase in the Homeowners Association dues, regular assessments, and/or reserves, inclusive of fees for the applicable condominium sub-association, master association, and private recreation facility license fee, combined HOA fees, payable by an ownership middle-income housing unit. An annual increase in combined HOA fees for member ownership middle-income housing units shall be limited to an amount not to exceed the annual increase in the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers for the San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward area as published by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. The adjustment shall be calculated by comparing the CPI from April of the previous year to April of the current year. If the CPI shows no increase or decrease, the combined HOA fees shall remain unchanged for the subsequent year. Adjusted payment shall take effect on July 1 and continue for at a minimum the following 12-month period. The same language will be added to as condition number 25 in the Community Development Department section of the Lot 3 tentative map conditions of approval. So the motion would be as written in the packet with the changes I just read into the record.
So the motion is to introduce for first reading. BA 2018-01.04, based on the suggested findings and with proposed revisions to section 11 relating to increases in combined HOA fees, and as was just read into the record.
With the changes just read into the record.
With the changes read into the record.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Harrod,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mitchell,
Yes.
Mayor Higley.
Yes.
And second motion to adopt resolution approving the tentative map, a tentative subdivision map for Lot 1 of the Mill District Project SBDV 003-2024, based on the suggested findings and subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
I'll second it.
Oh, sorry for motion a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Councilmember Harrod,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mitchell.
Yes.
Mayor Higley.
Yes.
And further move, we adopt a resolution approving tentative subdivision map for Lot 2 of the Mill District Project SBDV 004-2024, based on the suggested findings and subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Second.
A motion a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Councilmember Harrod,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mitchell.
Yes.
Mayor Higley.
Yes.
And finally, I move we adopt a resolution approving tentative subdivision map for Lot 3 of the Mill District Project SBDV 005-2024, based on the suggested findings and subject to the recommended conditions of approval with proposed revisions to condition number 25,
Correct, with the changes that I previously read into the record to condition number 25.
with the changes previously read.
Second.
Motion a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Edwards.
Yes.
Councilmember Harrod,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mitchell.
Yes.
Mayor Higley.
Yes. That was it? Got everything? All right. All right, I do want to acknowledge again, staff's work on this and to replay, I think you heard our comments and concerns, especially, you know, with our goals and what we're trying to achieve with the city. I think we've been very clear about that. So when you're looking at the additional units, you heard the comments from us. We take that seriously. And I think you've seen it on other projects that have tried to reduce units or whatever. That doesn't go well with us. So I wish you the best of luck, but we want those units and hopefully they come back soon.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate this evening and all of your commitment. And we are so excited. This is really an exciting time for Mill District. We have momentum, and with this, we'll continue. And the great things that we've done in the past will continue into the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Next up is an update. Let's see, hang on. Climate Mobilization Strategy Implementation Plan Annual Update. Larry, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Andrew Sternfeld, your Assistant City Manager here. Along with me tonight is Larry Zimmer, our Public Works Director. We've also got Tara Sampson, our Utility Conservation Analyst, joining remotely. We'll see her up on the screen here in a minute. We also have some additional staff in the room who have worked on the Climate Mobilization Strategy implementation as well. Next slide, please. So tonight really is an update on the implementation of the Climate Mobilization Strategy. We'll quickly go through some background and touch on the RCPA 2022 inventory, which was in the agenda packet as a separate item on consent this evening that you received. We really want to spend most of the night talking about successes to date, and so you'll see us spending a lot of time there. One of the things that we talked about when we developed this plan a little over a year ago was really the need for it to be action-oriented. And I think the ultimate plan the council adopted is very action-oriented, and we've been busy. So we want to share the updates, we want to share the progress, share some successes, but we'll also talk a little bit at the end about some risks and challenges as we wrap up, and then we'd love your feedback, comments, questions, and obviously public comment as well. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick summary of history of both the Regional Climate Protection Authority, RCPA, from the time that they were created and began their greenhouse gas inventory until 2022, 23, when the council directed the city staff to develop a climate mobilization strategy. And tonight, we're actually achieving one of the goals in the strategy, which is to provide an annual update to the public and council on the status of implementation. So we are checking a box through this presentation as well. Next slide, please. And just a quick reminder for the public and council both. This is emission sources in Healdsburg based on the 2018 greenhouse gas inventory that we used as kind of our baseline forecast. As you can see from the image, most of the cities, and this is kind of consistent across all communities in the United States, most of the emissions come from on-road transportation. This is the vehicles and delivery trucks and all the car emissions you see on the road every day. But we do also see emissions coming from electricity, natural gas, and water and wastewater that's delivered to homes and businesses, 8% from solid waste, and then 3% from off-road transportation, your tractors, diggers, those kind of vehicles. Next slide, please. So this is a similar slide. You've seen this one before, but we've added a new column to the end for 2022. As I mentioned in the outset, we did get the RCPA GHG results for 2022. So we've added that column here. You can see the trend line from all the way back to 1990 to peaking in 2010 and slowly making its way down. Couple points that I'll make on really this 2022 metric. Keep in mind that two things going on. One is that it's post-COVID. So post-COVID, when we know we had less vehicles on the road, less transportation happening, less development activity, some construction activity, but really a different dynamic in the economy than we normally see. We actually came out in total slightly less in 2022 than in the 2020 COVID year. We were the only municipal jurisdiction other than the unincorporated part of the county that saw a decrease from 2020 to 2022. So that's good news, we think. But I also want to point out that this was prior to the adoption of the climate mobilization strategy. So all the rest of the things we're going to talk about tonight actually had no bearing on these results. Matter of fact, anything that we've done in the last 2 years had no bearing on these results. These are back from 2022. When we get the 2024 inventory, we'll start to see some of those changes from implementing the climate mobilization strategy. But we will also see future impacts of both our weather and how that impacts our energy mix, as well as the selling of some of those climate credits that council approved about was it December of last year. Next slide, please. This is a similar slide showing both the orange line at the very top is showing our forecast. So that's if we did nothing, kind of what our GHG emissions would look like into the future out to 2045. The blue line in the middle is based on the state's existing mandated targets for GHG reductions. And the purple dotted line on the bottom is the RCPA more aggressive 2030 80% reduction target. The CMS, which has a time horizon of 2030, has that blue star kind of in the middle of the screen. That was the ultimate estimated GHG reductions based on the adopted climate mobilization strategy from last year. And you can see that the 2022 inventory results, we added a star there as well for 2022, showing we're pretty much on track right now with the state targets, but showing that the CMS target would actually put us a bit lower than the state targets by 2030. Next slide, please. And then one thing I just want to point out is there's the climate mobilization strategy is really two documents. There's the main document, which is kind of the full swath of activities and actions we're going to take, but we also included as an appendix an implementation plan. And so while the full CMS has a time horizon of 2030, includes 85 actions over 18 different measures, we really want to say, what can we get done from the time of adoption through the next 2-year budget cycle? What are the things we can get started? What are the actions we can take to get moving? Really to make, again, this plan not a plan that sits on the shelf, but an action-oriented plan that we follow and that directs our decisions and guides our motivations and strategies. And so the implementation plan for the next 2 years had us starting 57 actions. And as you all know from reviewing the plan, these measures and actions were kind of a variety of different types, from meeting state mandates, making changes to municipal operations, new programs and policies, some studies, and then lots of partnership and opportunities around equity as well. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Tara, who should be jumping on the screen here virtually to take the next couple slides.
Hi there, can everyone hear me?
We'll turn you up just a little bit.
Okay. Hi, thank you. So on this slide here, we have the greenhouse gas reductions by sector breakdown. if the CMS is fully implemented with all 85 actions by 2030. And a big focus of reductions would come from the transportation, solid waste, and building energy sectors. Next slide, please. So how are we doing so far? Based on the implementation plan, and we should have started working on 43 of the actions by Q2 of 2024. And as of July 2024, we've started 42 actions. There is some variance in the action start time, but overall an excellent start to our work. We do have 5 actions that are delayed or at risk. Some of these are specific to the local ordinance to go beyond state building code requirements. We passed a REACH code requiring electric, space, and water heating in new construction. However, we have paused enforcement due to a large court case that Andrew will touch on later. Another delayed action is related to a dedicated climate staff person that was not included in the biennial budget, but the team is making great progress through a coordinated effort with all the staff we have. Next slide, please. So now for some successes, starting with building energy, we have made progress on a number of actions, which I've highlighted a couple here. This includes developing a low-income multifamily appliance replacement program, as well as increasing outreach and promotion about available programs to our care customers. California is also receiving a federal hydrogen hub grant, which includes the Lodi Energy Center for green hydrogen production. And we've started an energy efficiency audit for the wastewater treatment plant. You can see us at the facility in the photo here. Next slide, please. 2023 also had 83% of our electricity from renewable and zero carbon sources. This is in large part from the wet winter that produced a lot of hydroelectric generation, which can fluctuate drastically from year to year. The electrification forecast we are developing to help understand future electricity consumption and demands will also help us plan for new resources to meet customer needs, as well as renewable and zero carbon targets. For example, we have a new contract for roughly 10% more solar in 2028. Next slide. You've already received recent updates on the first 2 items here, the municipal recycled water pipeline and the aquifer storage and recovery wells. But additionally, the state recently adopted the Making Conservation a California Way of Life regulation, which we've been preparing for meeting the compliance with the water budgets and best management practices that are outlined in that new regulation. Next slide. And for electric transportation, we've added new EVs to the city fleet, and construction on the city fleet chargers at the corporation yard is almost completed, which is important for making sure we can continue to provide our city services with those new vehicles. And we are planning for additional public charger locations to provide more charger access throughout the community. Those outline some of our successes so far, and I will pass it on for public and active transportation.
Next slide. We have been working with Sonoma County Transit to add a stop for the Route 60, which is the regional bus at North Village, and they also installed a shelter there. So the people at North Village are very happy with that. I'm sure council is aware that through the affordable housing grant application at Montage, there's additional money which is going to Sonoma County Transit, which can expand the Route 67, the intercity bus, by purchasing another vehicle, which would allow earlier and later use of the bus, which hopefully can get commuters and school users. We have talked about the GMO and how potentially increasing density along the transit routes could also improve the amount of people using transit and being able to walk or bike to their work. Recently, you heard a presentation on Grove Street, so that project is moving along very well. Healdsburg is just a little bit behind, and council will get an update on that project in the next couple of months. And our active transportation plan is nearing completion. On October 7th, you're scheduled to hear the draft, see the draft of that. It won't be finalized for a little while after that, but everything is moving and moving in the right direction. Next slide, please. On the solid waste front, there's a picture of our new compost hub, and I checked the numbers just this morning, and we have received 164 cubic yards of compost, which we are giving away free to the community. It was interesting at our recent meeting with Climate Action Healdsburg, by a show of hands who was aware we had this. Not very many were, so it's good to get the word out that this is free compost for the public. There's the Regional Biosolid Consortium, which is being headed by Windsor, which will, and Healdsburg obviously is part of, which will prevent the need for having to drive our biosolids quite a few miles to take it to a facility. We could take it to Windsor when this project is completed, if successful, and it can be treated for reuse the same as our compost would be, as opposed to going into a landfill and eliminating a lot of the transportation, which is just a wonderful thing. Our SB 1383 activities are moving forward, led largely by Recology and Zero Waste Sonoma. The biggest part of the 1383 is getting food out of the landfill, which is a huge producer of greenhouse gases. And so they've been doing all kinds of activities, trying to convert businesses to using compost. There's a whole program on food recovery, so the food isn't actually wasted, but repurposed and used for its original intent, but just in a different way. And staff is also working with Climate Action Healdsburg on a couple of smaller projects, one of which is a reuse fair where people can bring in lamps and other damaged material and have it fixed there so it doesn't go into the landfill. They're not buying new products. So we're working on getting that out sometime soon. And Climate Action Healdsburg is also working on creating some kind of an event for the Zero Waste Week coming up. I'm not sure when it's coming up, but soon. Thank you.
All right, next slide, please. So a few months ago, council authorized a resolution for us to apply for an urban forest grant through CAL FIRE. We were supposed to know by now, but we checked in earlier this week, and it sounds like they've delayed their award decisions to the end of this month or early October. We requested $350,000 for that grant, which would cover the costs of not just updating our out-of-date tree ordinance and tree list, but also creating a master plan for all the city-owned trees to make sure we're taking care of them, maintaining them, and replacing them in a smart, orderly, timely fashion so that we don't end up in a place where we're placing lots of trees in one area at once. And it would also help us plant 50 trees within the low-income census tract that still exists on the southern, well, kind of the western portion of Healdsburg. In addition, you've seen the Fitch Mountain Access Improvement Project. It's of note because we're taking care of our open space and we planted new plantings there. You've also seen fuel reduction work ongoing with both our goats, but also mastication and prescribed burns. When we can do those will continue through our work with the fire department and the grant that they received to do a lot of that work through the Coastal Conservancy. And then this isn't really a city-led project, but certainly a lot of city partners and partners in the community involved. A lot of success and progress made this year in Arundo removal along the Russian River. This is really something that, you know, getting rid of invasive species along the river allows for the flora and fauna that we want to be there to grow. It also takes care of lots of fire issues as well. And really, one of the beautiful things about the climate mobilization plan that we did adopt is it's not just about things the city can do, but it's things that the community can do and take action on their own. This is a great example of work being done there. Next slide, please. But there are a few risks and challenges that we faced and will continue to face. They're nothing that we can't mitigate against, but we did want to talk about them a little bit tonight. First one is grant funding. There are some big ticket items on the climate mobilization strategy, and some of which we've had success on already, some of which we hope to hear successful news on in the near future, and then some of which we've been unsuccessful on. A lot of the transportation-related grants, whether it's the microtransit that we looked at earlier this year or even the EV charging, requesting funding for just a grant that does EV charging is not exciting enough for most federal agencies to fund. They want to see some newer technology components, whether it's battery storage or a solar array attached to it. So we need to get more innovative, and we're going to continue to work on that. But even then, these grants are highly competitive and they take a lot of time to develop. And the chances of success, depending on the grant, the amount of funding available, could be very low or very high. So that's a risk. It's a challenge. We'll continue to mitigate for it and go after the grants we think work for the projects we have teed up in the CMS. Tara mentioned earlier the California Restaurant Association versus City of Berkeley case and how that impacts our ability to enforce the existing REACH code we had on the books, but also impact several of the actions in the climate mobilization strategy around education and outreach, because those were all tied to the existing REACH code as well. I did want to mention that the 2025 Energy Code was adopted last week by the California Energy Commission, and that'll now go to the California Building Standards Commission for approval later this year. That will really kind of set the tone for what the guidance is around future new construction. And so staff will be monitoring that and be paying attention to what's in there and kind of following it through the process. And as we learn more and understand more about the approval process, we'll have a better sense of what's to come in the next building code. We mentioned community coordination, community partnership. We've had awesome partners at the Climate Action Healdsburg. We presented to their group just last week on our progress. We've been able to do a lot together, but the coordination and partnerships is time intensive, and there are limited resources. So I think this is an area where we always could do more and want to do more, and we're having to kind of pick and choose our spots on where we think the biggest impact is. We've had some great partnerships, and again, a lot of activities taken on by groups on their own, which is also awesome. And we'll continue to encourage more of that as well. But we have had some great partnerships pop up, and we look forward to continue to working with the partners across the community. And then finally, public education and participation is key. A lot of the goals and the actions that will result in the most meaningful greenhouse gas reductions come down to individual decisions to change how they do things, or individual choices to invest in new technology or invest in a zero emission vehicle or change out an appliance. And those come with all sorts of complexities, whether it's cost constraints or desire to do that or other things on the plate. And so public education and participation will continue to be a challenge, and it's something that we'll continue to work both with our partners on and in the outreach materials and events that we do. But as we wrap up, I just want to mention we have lots of things that are exciting in the hopper, some of which you heard of tonight. The tree grant, we're hoping to hear back from really soon, and we'll kick off our work. Even if we don't get that grant, there will be some work we'll be doing on trees this coming year, so you'll see that come back to you. We've got some EV charging projects in motion. Tara mentioned the Corporation Yard, but we've also got some grants and funding coming forward for downtown. And then we've got all these great bike and pedestrian projects in motion, whether it's the Montage Park Trails, our active transportation plan. March Avenue repaving project is going to be great for active transportation, particularly our cyclists. And then, as Director Zimmer mentioned, both Healdsburg Avenue and Grove Street. So there's a lot of big projects happening. Some of these were in the mix before the CMS, but they all support the goals of the CMS. And we're going to see some pretty substantial progress here, I think, in the next 12 to 18 months. So excited to come back next year and give you an update on even more wins. But we think this is a really great start. And with that, we're happy to take any questions, comments, or feedback you or the public have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, have we gotten the charging station in for the shuttle in town so that they could run more routes on that? What's the update on that?
So we are continuing working with Sonoma County Transit on coming up with alternatives to charging their Route 67 bus. Right now, they're driving that bus up from Santa Rosa, and then they're limited in their route and their timing of coverage because they have to get it back to charge again. So we've looked at a number of different options with them. I think the game changer that's really causing us to reflect at the moment is the grant that we just received. Because now knowing they'll have two up here, we've kind of thought about, well, what are the other opportunities? Is there an opportunity instead of using the corporation yard to instead have a charging station along the route somewhere? So we're kind of resetting and rethinking what's possible based on that news coming forward. But we've been working with them. We'll continue to explore options with them and hopefully come up with something here soon.
All right, thank you. It's nice to see we're moving along on a lot of these issues. Thanks.
Member Kelly?
With respect to that, the charging infrastructure for the shuttle or other vehicles, have you guys engaged the air district for the Northern Sonoma County Air Pollution Control District in that conversation for like a regional charging hub?
Not about a regional charging hub. I did reach out to the Air District about funding opportunities because the challenge with the larger vehicles is the type of charging infrastructure they need. It's a higher electrical capacity. I'm going to butcher this, Director Crowley, so I'm sorry. But they need more power in places we don't have a lot of power sometimes. And so those infrastructure costs and getting them in the ground it's fairly substantial. And so we did reach out to the Air District looking for kind of grant opportunities around that. They didn't have any at the time, but we'll continue the conversation going.
And has there been a conversation with the school district because they have so many electric buses now that have been funded in part through federal grants and others that they have bus charging infrastructure? And is that a possible opportunity to do some joint use of said chargers?
It's certainly possible, and it's on our list to kind of explore that option. It kind of takes the city out of the equation. That's really between SCT and the school district to kind of come up with that agreement for theirs, for their joint use. However, we're happy to kind of create that connection and bring folks to the table. One of the things that I've learned a lot about through this process is that the buses in particular, depending on the company they're made by, the charging infrastructure may be different. Some of them are still plug-in, some of them mount from underneath. That was part of the challenge with SCT's bus, was that's an undermount charger. And so kind of connecting the dots on what infrastructure do you have and will it work in their use case has been an exploratory effort. But yes, that's one idea that's come to our attention that we need to help connect the dots on.
Great, thank you.
I had a quick question on one of the first things on the list when we're doing the climate mobilization strategy was looking at the totality, I think, for the charging infrastructure and locations and I'm assuming the school district and all that is part of that as we're looking at infrastructure. I can't remember the exact one, but it was one of the very first ones that was on there to do a study.
I believe you're talking about the demand capacity study. Tara, do you want to take that?
Yeah.
If Director Crowley wants to add anything as well, but that is something that's in progress, is doing that electrification forecast. So incorporating increased electric consumption from vehicles as well as increased electric consumption from buildings. So both of those, what's our baseline and what could it look like in the future? And then what resources do we need to meet those needs in the future and hit the renewable and zero carbon targets. So it is looking at different rates of adoption of EVs and electric appliances in homes and buildings.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad that was one that I was pretty excited about because I think it does tie into if we're looking at potentially electrifying the post office and all their vehicles, what's the infrastructure that's needed there? What's the capacity that we have, or the bus or the electric garbage truck that was here for a little bit. And we were the first Sonoma County, those kind of things where, to your point, having a bus or a garbage truck charging in Santa Rosa, and with how heavy the trucks are and buses are to begin with, their batteries 25% drained by the time they get up here. Like, well, there's a better solution, charge here. So, all right, let's open up to the public. Any members of the public like to make comment? Judy?
I'm just impressed with.
Well, you can come say it into the microphone then.
I missed the Climate Action Healdsburg meeting, so I came tonight to get the update, and I am just really impressed with how much the city has accomplished. I guess I knew all of this was going on, but I'm really impressed with the presentation and how it's come together. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Linda, welcome.
Thank you, Linda Cade. Nice to see you, Mayor Hagley and council members. I have a question about selling climate credits, and I don't really understand what that is. And also, who calculates GHGs and how are they calculated? Also, it seems like a real cash cow for people who are selling electric vehicles. So it seems money motivated more than climate concerned to me. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? All right, so we had two questions. Who calculates GHG, and then what was the other one was about
Climate
the climate
credit,
credits.
renewable.
Yeah,
So the Regional Climate Protection Authority conducts the greenhouse gas inventory every 2 years. They actually just came out with a pretty neat dashboard that you can kind of sift by category of emissions and drive in by specific communities to see the detail. I'm nowhere near qualified to get into the math or science about how they come up with these, but a lot of it's, studying the emissions. For example, in transportation, they're out counting vehicles that come in and out of each community and making us, there's all sorts of assumptions and challenging and fun math that PhDs figure out to come up with the assessment every year. And between assessments, some of the assumptions change, right? So the science and the math gets better, and you see RCPA improve as they do each inventory. So they're the ones that come up with the data and provide the data to us. That's part of their charge as being the regional entity to fix any mistakes I make in this. But in previous years, we had excess renewable energy production, and we're able to take those credits to market and sell them to jurisdictions who need those energy credits to meet their mandates. And with that comes a financial gain for the city to then further invest in our electric utility. And so the council adopted a resolution authorizing us to do that. What that may mean, and we're not really sure what it will look like in terms of the future RCPA inventory, but it could affect that building energy category in future inventories based on the timing of those credits hitting the market and being sold, and how RCPA kind of takes that information, includes it into their inventory.
all right, thank you. Does anybody want to say anything? Otherwise, yeah, go ahead.
For the recent grant that we were awarded for the Saggio Hills Affordable Housing Development, which very exciting. That's wonderful to see that project moving forward, and those units getting built in the foreseeable future is wonderful. Or at least 48 of the units that are contemplated. And the component that's like, I think $5 or $6 million around transportation infrastructure improvements. There was like a list that we were emailed out. Is it possible in the future at some point just to get kind of a download of some of those actions of what that, I knew that part of it was around the Sonoma County Transit Shuttle. Now hearing that that's going to enable them to purchase an actual second shuttle, which is exciting. I wasn't sure kind of what they were going to use those funds for, but there's also like a ride or a van share component and something else. So just for, not now, but for future, would it be possible to, if we get an update on that project, holistically, we could get a better understanding of where some of those, I think there's some connectivity money for maybe some roadway repairs or sidewalk or other places around town where we're going to be utilizing those funds, just to get a presentation about what that looks like, because it's exciting.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. I appreciate the presentation. And Judy, yeah, this is a lot of exciting stuff, but there's a lot more that's coming down the pipeline. So looking forward to next year's report. It'll be even better. All right. Next up, we'll get an update on the L&M Village quarterly. We'll get an update on the L&M Village quarterly update. Stephen, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Stephen Sotomayor, Housing Director for the City of Healdsburg. I'll be joined by Margaret Slyke, who's going to be joining us via Zoom today, and we'll give her a chance to get on here. But before we do, I'll just give you a quick overview. We'll walk through the presentation and happy to answer any questions. But today we're hopefully, we're going to go over the Q1 highlights for the second year of operation for the L&M Village. Some of the data and program outcomes that you're used to seeing in these updates, the financial status, And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about the 2024 point in time count that was just released and how that fits into our overall programming and some observations from that. But with that, I'd like to hand the presentation over to the Executive Director of Reach for Home, Margaret Slyke. And
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm going to just go through quickly some slides because they'll be easy to read. And then I just have a little more context behind a couple of things. So go ahead, next slide. So program outcomes, L&M Village continues addressing homelessness in the community. Our case managers focus on transitioning participants to housing, and you'll hear more about where we are with all of that. A couple of staffing updates. We finally were able to hire our last bilingual case manager for the L&M. That position is now filled, so we're super excited to have a full staff. Our mental health internship program launched. So we have this January, we launched our mental health program and have a director of mental health services. And actually 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 now at most, we were able to hire an intern to also provide mental health services under the supervision of our director. So we're able to offer more on the ground mental health services when they're needed within 24 hours to 48 hours. So we're expanding that. And then the Sire encampment is something that we've talked a lot about. I have a few more updates on that I'll expand on. It says it's clear. There are actually 2 people that are still there, and we are enforcing a no trespass order that Sire put into place. So we're working with the Healdsburg Police Department as well as the Sheriff's Department to get those people to move on or accept services. So there is one small area, actually a community member reached out to me today with some pictures. We're going to go out and see if we can get it cleaned up a little more and just continue to encourage those 2 last people to take services and to continue the open line of communication with the Sheriff's Department and the Healdsburg Police Department. I've also been asked by people, well, what are you going to do to keep it clear? We are going to continue to contract with Russian River Keepers for the next 1.5 years until the Sire timeframe ends on the ERF grant. Our street outreach workers are going out several times a week to make sure that new people aren't coming onto the property. So far, no new people have come on. It's just the 2 that are not leaving that we're working through, which is a huge success rate, by the way, with 42 people that started. So only 2 of those 42 have decided they don't want to move yet. And we're not giving up, but they are still there. We are looking still at adding fencing, just expanding some fencing along Kinley. It's going to take a little bit because we need to coordinate with SIAR and the city and permitting, and it's just a little more complicated than putting up a fence. So, but we have not let that go, and we will continue to do that. And then just due diligence of community members. Someone reached out to me today, like I said, and that's great. If you see something, say something. There are a lot of areas down there by the river and on SIAR. So, we might miss something. If a community member sees something down there, or it looks like someone might be living there, just give us a heads up at Reach for Home, and we'd be happy to go check it out, see if someone's there. If there's trash, we can get Russian River Keepers to come out. Like I said, for the next 1.5 years, we'll be working with them on this project. And so, don't hesitate to reach out and say something. We would rather be informed and be able to help than not know. So that's really helpful. Just a quick breakdown of where the people went who were on SIAR's property. We have 32 people housed, 15 had vouchers, 3 went through a rapid rehousing program. 2 went through permanent supportive housing through the coordinated entry system, which is the countywide system to help house people. 9 people are in master leases that are in Reach for Home's name, and 3 are receiving financial assistance. 6 are in interim housing, 3 relocated out of the area, and like I said, the 2 are still on the river. So just a little bit more about where people went. These are the numbers for the L&M. total participants permanently housed 36. You can kind of work through the numbers. They are cumulative. So when you look at Q1 participants, the total number of participants served since we opened is 71. So you can kind of see that they're all cumulative numbers straight down. And, I don't really need to go over this very much because you can see the numbers. But we are making progress, and we do continue to encourage people to seek mental health support, which you can see has been pretty successful. And we always get people on any sort of subsidies or assistance to help them increase their income as soon as they enter in, which is usually CalFresh and those sorts of things, so that they can get food. Next slide. This information hasn't changed. It stays pretty stable from every update that I've given. And basically it's saying that the people we are serving is a reflection of the community of Healdsburg and the people experiencing homelessness here. And we're equally serving people based on those statistics. And that is why we have more than half of our staff are bilingual to help with the monolingual unsheltered individuals in Healdsburg. The slides stayed the same. Next. And this is just a reminder, the slide's in there every single time. We have not really changed any of our services, but these are all the services that we offer at the LNM for those who might be watching the presentation who are unfamiliar. But we don't need to go over it. It is something that has been provided each time. So we can go to the next slide. Stephen, if you want to go ahead and just quickly go over this one.
Yes, so this is all the funding sources that were put into the LNM. If you notice that we have the home key that was awarded to us back in 21, which mainly was the capital acquisition along with the county capital match, which helped us do the rehabilitation. I think what I'd like to point out is the county operating contract. Currently, we're under a contract with the county that is providing us funding for the operations of the LNM. We're in the process of renegotiating that contract with the county that would increase the dollar amount per day to I believe $105 per day, which will match more closely what the operational expenses of the LNM are. Currently, we're operating less than what the projected budget was that we presented to the state. But that gives us an opportunity to start looking at how we increase a reserve fund. On top of that, we've also worked with the county who have indicated that we'll be able to get some of the expenses reimbursed from previous. If you recall, the original county operating contract was less than the total operating cost. The city manager and I met with the director of health services, and we were able to explain what we needed to operate. We were able to get the operating agreement to be extended out to June of 25. So currently we're under an agreement with the county till June of 25. However, we are waiting on the final amendment that would increase that dollar amount. And then beyond that, I think is where we start looking at increasing requesting a multi-year contract. That request has been made. The good news is that the funding that generally supports these programs has been reapproved through the governor's budget. So we still do have that was generally the linchpin in whether or not the county could continue to fund it. So as we continue to move forward, we'll keep you updated on the status of that contract. We're expecting it back with the amendments here very soon. But so far, the operations have been a little bit under from what we're expecting. Largely, there's some savings on the food costs. Additionally, there was some staffing positions that were not filled during that period, which had some cost savings. But as Margaret mentioned, they are starting to ramp that up again. Next slide.
And just to quickly add to what Stephen was saying, we did, and I know at the last update, I informed you that we were looking at CalAIM as a way to supplement some of the staff positions that we have at the LNM. We did invoice them about 2.5 months ago for some positions and invoiced them again. We've not yet heard back if that was successful, but we are going to continue to bill them for some of these positions to alleviate them from the budget and save money. Also, the Healthcare Foundation, their new executive director, is convening and collaborating around CalAIM to help other organizations understand how to bill and to bring CalAIM infusion into Northern Sonoma County. So we are following that lead and working to get more information about how to successfully make sure invoices go through. So we're not giving up on that, but wanted to circle back since I mentioned it at the last update. So challenges, grant timing and funding, like you just heard from Stephen, just working through some of that. More permanent supportive housing locations. We have been able to master lease several units. I think we're up to 4 or 5, but we need about 10 to 12 more. So we need to just keep working on getting landlords to rent to us, increasing outside funding, leveraging existing sources, trying to see here vouchers with landlords, like I say every time, just to keep it in the forefront. And just to keep working on scattered site units and Dry Creek Commons set-asides, which are pipeline still. So not much has changed here, really. Same focus.
And I would add to that slide that one of the things that we were able to do ahead of the L&M was to invest in our supportive housing infrastructure. We have the Victory Studios, we have the scattered sites that also supported that. And we also have Dry Creek that's coming on board, which will add additional units above and beyond what Reach for Home has been able to do through the voucher program. Building the pipeline is the key, is to get people moving through the L&M village so we can add more people that need the interim housing and stability. But that pipeline, with these new developments coming in, I think leveraging existing affordable housing developments that already have a subsidy has been proving to be a good strategy in how you don't have to pay for the full capital cost of building a permanent supportive housing unit. So we're really proving how that can be integrated in almost an inclusionary type way for our affordable housing developments, not taking over as many units as that would be unmanageable, but rather keeping them scattered throughout the city in order to integrate better.
And the last point on that slide, the homeless prevention expansion. So I talked in my last quarterly report that we needed to expand our homeless prevention program. And not only did we expand it, but Reach for Home became the hub for Northern Sonoma County as a part of the county's infusion of over I believe it's $2.5 million. And so some of that money will be coming to Northern Sonoma County, including Healdsburg, to make sure we keep people housed who were not only chronically homeless before, but also to any family or individual who meets criteria who might need support. And it includes case management to make sure that they're back up on their feet. And it's not just, here's a month's rent, but it actually comes with case management to see what the root cause was to make sure that they don't slip back again. So.
Then next slide. And then finally, we thought this would be a good opportunity while on the topic to talk a little bit about the 2024 point in time count. As you may have seen, that the point in time count indicated that we had an increase in homelessness, but in the report today, I think it's important to note that the SIRE encampment process and the grant that came through the state didn't start at the time of the count. This is a year-old data, if not generally a year-old data, which is a snapshot of a point in time. So since then, with the housing numbers that you hear, about 40 people being housed, you can kind of get an idea of where we might be standing in comparison to that overall number. In fact, we might be the only city that actually advocated for them to revisit our count because the sheltered count was not correct. As we look through the point in time count, as something that we needed to correct, it was undercounted within our shelter. But these are some of the shortcomings that we have of point in time counts. Is one, point in time counts are just a snapshot. Two, they can't indicate what's happened since that period of time, since January. But what we do to counteract that is Reach for Home keeps the by names list. And that by names list is more of our driving effort than we would look at as an annual census. It's more of a national tool than it is a helpful tool to local jurisdictions. In fact, it more often than not creates more reason to explain from local knowledge as opposed to a year-old data that people might take a look at and see as an indicator. But generally what we can see is across the board over time that the trend is going down. If we look at the average of the number of people that are in Healdsburg and we look at across the years, I think that the previous year was a little undercounted. That could be due to jurisdictional lines. I think that this year, especially in the context of the work that's been along the Russian River, I think we're making steady progress regardless of what the numbers are actually indicating in that point in time count at this time. And I'll let Margaret, if she has anything else to add into that.
I think you covered it really well. We're just looking at taking our by names list and finding out how to make it match the point in time count going forward. So now that we have a comprehensive list of all the individuals that we have, just figuring out how can we make it more accurate and how can we make sure that the point in time count numbers that come back are closely related to our by names list. And so we've been reconciling that. We estimate based on our by names list that we have probably around 70 people in northern Sonoma County. So, and that, like Stephen said, we've housed 40 people since this, and that was a big chunk of it. And we've actually housed more. That was just SIRE. So that's it.
And just to add to that, why the by names list is so important, in a point in time count, they use formulas, right? So if they see a tent, they see an RV, they see a vehicle, most of these consultants that are point in time have a formula. A tent may be 1.4 people, while Reach for Home may know that that's just one person. So there are some nuances to it, but in general, I think the message that we have is that the trend is going downwards. The work on the river is only going to show, in my opinion, more results in the 2025 point in time count moving forward. And so the next slide. And that concludes the presentation, and Margaret and I are happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Well, it's not a question, but that's the best questions slide I've seen in a while. All right. I think you had a question.
Yeah, can you elaborate a little bit more about the funding gap between what we're getting reimbursed from the county or their estimate, and what the reality is for the actual amount? Just so we have a sense of what that funding gap looks like.
So sure. And so when the county put together the operational supporting agreement, the framework, when we originally started on the Project Home Key, the dollar amount that was put out was about $80 per day. And that came, it wasn't mathematically computed. It was just generally thought that that might be the number that we get to, with the hope that as we progress down, with Project Home Key in coordination with the county, that we'd be able to adjust. The resolution that the county passed did have that $80. It was able to be changed by the CAO at the time, now the CEO. But rather, our costs are coming in closer to about $105 a day, but that varies on the month. And so one of the challenges that we face is that our costs aren't always the same exact cost every month. It depends on the amount of clients. The county was looking at originally was a per door, then they moved to a per client. And so really what we've been talking to the county about is figuring out how to best meet the funding to meet our operational needs, which is we have a fixed cost for operating the L&M Village across the board. And when we get down to those numbers, that's about $105 to $110 per day. And that's what we asked for, with the hope that any money that's not spent within a month will continue to fund the operations beyond 25. So there is no exact fixed cost, but I would say about $105 per day is about what we're spending per door to operate the L&M. Right now, the budget was somewhere around $66,000 a month, and the last reimbursement request came in around $57,900. So we're staying pretty close. At that new reimbursement rate, we feel that that would be enough to cover the cost of the operational expenses of the L&M at this point.
And we have an existing agreement that goes through July at that lower amount, but we're asking them to shift it upwards to meet that gap.
Correct. So currently our agreement is at the $80 per person, and we're hopeful that what we can, they have indicated that they're willing to support the higher dollar amount and on a per door basis, which would be more reflective of what it costs to run the L&M, regardless if anybody's in there or not. They still have those operational costs. And so while other Project Home Keys may be better off served by per client, we felt that that was better for us. And we're expecting that amendment to reflect those.
Great, thanks.
All right, we'll open up to the public. Linda, you're it. Nothing? All right, I'll close public comment. You wanted to make a comment real quick?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, as always, doing great work, and it really helps our city a lot. But I also wanted to put in a plug for the fundraiser that's coming up on the 29th. Can't believe you guys didn't mention it. So It's.
Thank you for the plug.
Yeah, getting to functional zero, right? So, thank you.
It's this
Councilmember
weekend,
Edwards?
so thanks for mentioning
Yeah,
it.
just had a quick comment as I was speaking to some of the residents on Kennedy Lane neighborhood, and they were quite happy with how the LNM is functioning. They had some fears, and they are really happy that none of those fears have come to fruition. So I just wanted to pass that on to you.
Councilmember Kelly?
I just wanted to echo, I think you guys are doing exceptional work. It's obviously, this is a lot of dedication and, going back and, revisiting folks and putting in the difficult work that it takes to actually get people housed as opposed to move them from place to place. And I think, we're really fortunate to have Reach for Home as a partner in this with the city. And I can't imagine what we would do if we didn't have Reach for Home as a partner in our city. And so I'm really just grateful for your commitment and your staff and the care and dedication they have to solving this very difficult problem that so many communities really struggle with moving forward on. And so just great work. I know it's not linear in terms of, 2 steps forward, 1 step back in terms of some of the data, but I think you guys are making tremendous progress. And I just want to say thank you for your partnership.
Thank you. Councilmember Harrod?
It's like we're starting to get used to these great reports, and I don't want us to lose sight of how astonishing this whole program is and the benefits that it's brought to our community, but especially to those people who are benefiting directly from the services and the hope that Reach for Home is bringing to these individuals. Really, if you had to parse it out, they're the ones who are suffering the most in our community. So there's a strong moral imperative that we treat this problem seriously, and it really reflects amazingly well on our community that you're getting the support that you're getting. Thank you for mentioning the fundraiser. And but there's all kinds of support that you have from your board, from your staff. The leadership is fantastic. Stephen, your leadership exemplary, and we're just so grateful that we have this here in Healdsburg. So it really can't be overstated. It's super important, and it's and I personally am deeply thankful for the work you're doing.
Thank you. And I'll just add that, tonight's been an agenda full of exciting items that are very consequential when we're talking about housing, whether it's at the high end, the middle income, the income restricted units, and then now with Reach for Home. I have a long memory of some of the meetings that we sat in here, hearing the doubt, the questions, the skepticism, and to be able to see over the long haul how everything's starting to come together. It's really exciting. And so, a lot of that, like my fellow council members have said, starts with Reach for Home, especially with this piece here, and how Reach for Home is able to help us as a city get to where we are today. And the LNM Village has been one of those success stories that, like the statistics, people like to crow one way or the other. I take it all with a grain of salt. The fact that there's a by names list and you're actually helping people, not a statistic, to me, that's really speaks to what we are in Healdsburg. So just wanted to add that, and thank you for the presentation, and see you at the event, I guess.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you, council members, mayor, and thank you to the city of Healdsburg, because it truly is a team effort. And without your support and without you helping to bring it to the forefront and get it through, we wouldn't be here. So without you, we wouldn't be here. So thank you. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. All right, next up is new business appointments of the City Selection Committee and Mayors and Council Members Association Board of Directors. Raina?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. I have a short PowerPoint presentation for you this. Next slide, please. Tonight, the action is to review letters of interest for the appointment to the Sonoma County Measure O Oversight Committee and direct the mayor or his alternate on how to vote at the October 10th meeting. Next slide, please. The Sonoma County Mayors and Council Members Association and the Board of Directors and the City Selection Committee is a collaboration of all the Sonoma County cities with a goal of creating a unified front to represent the strongest voice possible in support of city interests. The City of Healdsburg is a member. Each body appoints members to various regional boards and commissions. And at the October 10th meeting, the City Selection Committee will be considering filling a vacancy on the County of Sonoma Measure O Oversight Committee, which was approved by the voters in November 2020 to fund mental health and homelessness services. Next slide, please. There are 2 vacancies currently that you are deciding on. There were 4 applicants. Mayor Kevin McDonald from Petaluma, Councilmember Ben Ford from Cantati. Those 2 are the current incumbents on the Measure O Oversight Committee. And then Stephen Zolman from Sebastopol and Gerard Judice, from Rohnert Park. Next slide, please. Again, the recommended action is to review letters of interest for the appointment to the Sonoma County Measure O Oversight Committee and direct the mayor or his alternate on how to vote. Next slide. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, open up to the public. All right, we'll close it. For this one, I kind of look at it like with NCPA, we try to make sure we have a balance between big cities and small cities. And that's kind of what, when I looked at this, that's kind of what I looked at. And then the other thing that's a passion of mine is making sure that the dollars that are leaving Healdsburg are coming back to Healdsburg. And the one person on this list that had reached out that reiterated that to me was Gerard Judice from Rohnert Park. So that's kind of who I like to represent the larger city. I don't know. Any thoughts? Yes.
Yeah, I know since Mayor McDonald from Petaluma is a directly elected mayor, he will continue on, in that mayor seat. He has served since the beginning of when Measure O was adopted by the voters. And I think I've had a lot of conversations with him because our voters were paying into Measure O, but it didn't seem like we were getting some of the services that other cities were getting with respect to Measure O. And now it feels like we actually are getting some of those dollars back with respect to the policing team that's doing street outreach. And so I think I appreciate the work that he's done and kind of getting that going. I have never had a conversation with Ben Ford about his role on the Measure O Oversight Committee, and I haven't had a lot of experience, in working with him actively. I know Sebastopol has had a lot of challenges around mental health and homelessness and continues to with respect to some of the lack of resources and some of the stuff going on in Sebastopol. So I think for their city, I could see that being, really helpful for them to receive some of those resources. And then I work with Gerard. He's on SCTA, RCPA. He's also our Golden Gate Bridge District representative for mayors and council members. So I know he already is on a number of different committees. So just wanted to give those comments.
Mayor?
Oh, I didn't realize I was on. Yeah, I like the idea of the larger city and smaller city. It seems like the 2 incumbents sort of encompass that already. I'm a big proponent for the experience people have gained on these committees already. And I know it's usually a really high learning curve. So although I haven't talked to them specifically about this, I am also always very impressed with Gerard and his energy and ability to really dig into things. So, I would probably like to see him and perhaps Kevin continue.
Yeah, I talked to Gerard and he's very passionate about seeing dollars come back to moderate sized cities. And I think that's a little closer to us. And I know that also I've spoken with Stephen, and he is really passionate about mental health and child issues. So I'm a little torn, but I feel that both of those are very well qualified and would benefit us in the size cities that they currently represent.
Councilmember Harrod?
Any one of these 4 leaders would be a great choice. It's a tough choice. I would like to reiterate that I'm impressed with Vice Mayor Zolman, and not just because I've spoken with him personally, but the detail in his letter was impressive. I was less impressed by Kevin's letter, but I really am impressed by your comment that he's working to benefit Healdsburg with Measure O funds, and that you've had fruitful conversations with him and that he knows it well. So that's really important to me as well. So I hate to put any two above the other two, but those are the ones that that appeal to me the most.
I think listen to everybody's comments. I think out of the list here, I would probably support Gerard Giudice and maybe Kevin McDonald, even though it isn't large and small. I think Stephen is very passionate, but he's relatively new on council. Gerard is running unopposed, so he'll be in Rohnert Park for another 4 years. And he is very passionate about this, so those would be my recommendations.
I second that.
I third it.
Whoa. We have a motion and a second for Kevin McDonald and Gerard Giudice.
Councilmember Edwards,
Yes.
Councilmember Harrod,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Mitchell.
Yes.
Mayor Higley.
Yes. All right. So with that, we'll come to the fun part.
Can I also just say that should the vote get tricky, we
Oh.
trust you. Councilmember Harrod's comments, I think they would all do a fantastic
Yeah.
job, and squirrely with the actual votes and how it all works out.
Yes, I don't think we're going to be in a bad spot with anybody. I think there's a couple rise above, but if it shifts around, I think we're still in a good spot. Let's see. All right. Council member reports on matters of interest occurring since previous regular meeting expense reimbursement report. Let's start down. I started with you last time. So Councilmember Edwards, let's go here. Go right across.
Yeah, the opening of the mini library was a nice event, and we had another nice ribbon cutting in town. It's really nice to see those continuing to happen in this town and attracting new businesses that are wanting to be here. So, and that's my report.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I'm with you there. We got the gallery, the art gallery is fabulous. So we're getting some real variety of places that are opening, which is really a lot of fun. And otherwise, that's about it. I've just been working on client work lately.
Councilmember Kelly?
I attended the Climate Action Healdsburg meeting and was able to get a sneak peek of the mobilization strategy presentation from tonight. Also, we had an SCTA RCPA Board of Directors meeting, and one of the things that came up that will be coming back for kind of announcement and broader discussion is around there is a 30-year-old transit funding formula that is being looked at, which will be a huge opportunity for Sonoma County Transit to receive and SMART potentially to receive more funding from a regional formula right now, where a lot of the funds from Sonoma County's transit allotment are going to the Golden Gate Bridge District bus and ferry service operation, which doesn't serve a lot of cities. Like we don't have that bus service up here, and nor do a number of the cities in Sonoma County. So I think that that'll be a big potential shift with respect to funding, and hopefully that Sonoma County Transit will get some additional funding. We also have a vacancy for Healdsburg's representative on the Climate Action Advisory Committee under RCPA. So if there's any folks who are interested from Healdsburg that would be interested in being our community member on that body, I'd be happy to talk to them, putting it out to the universe if anybody's interested in applying to be appointed to that. And then also attended the Healdsburg Museum's annual dinner, where they honored Anne Vercelli as the Leadership Award, which was a really special opportunity to hear about her history in the community. And what was really cool is they started that award a number of years ago, and the very first recipient. And so it's very full circle that she is receiving that award from the Healdsburg Museum. And then they outlined a lot of the work that the Healdsburg Museum is doing going forward. And it sounds like they have some pretty remarkable and exciting things coming up before the museum that I think are going to really greatly benefit our community. So that was cool to hear what they're up to. And then I met with the folks from the True West Film Center. They are working through some of the access challenges with the West Plaza Park and the driveway area that's really beat up kind of behind where they're building the new movie theater. And so they are looking to the city to help advance some funding for fixing up that driveway area. And I know they're going to be reaching out to other members of the council. So heads up that they're going to be asking us to maintain that area as they get ready to cut the ribbon on their big, beautiful new theater next year. And then I think generally speaking, that was it. There was a launch event for the Measure I campaign, the Our Kids, Our Future initiative last Friday night. And looking forward to, we're right in the middle of the Little League Fall Ball series right now. And so that is a really fun way to kind of see what's happening with youth recreation in the city. And then this Thursday, I'm attending the Russian River Keeper Ripon River Bash event. So that should be fun to see and hear what they're up to with their work along the river.
Thank you. Councilmember Harrod.
Thank you. I too went to the True West meeting, and in addition to what Councilmember Kelly said, we got to learn more about the theater, and then I guess they are breaking ground on that soon. So that's exciting. And the conversation led to some short-term and long-term planning ideas, improvements that we can work on in the coming weeks, months, and years. But that's going to be a really exciting addition to our community. I went to the Climate Action Healdsburg meeting, lots of great conversation and interaction presentations at that meeting. So they do a great job of keeping people informed. That was excellent. I was invited along with Councilmember Edwards to a conversation with Vice Mayor Zolman from Sebastopol and also Eli Melrod from Soulful. We got a tour of the Soulful building and saw the progress they're making there. They're about to open soon, working hard to get that place ready. So that's exciting. Then we just had a conversation that Vice Mayor Zolman asked for just a brainstorming about economics, business, and so on, with Eli being sort of a bridge, having a business in both towns now, to help, find out what we're doing in Healdsburg, how that could benefit Sebastopol. But it was kind of a back and forth, and was really kind of underscored how important it is to have these relationships with other cities. So I thought it was really enjoyable and enlightening, and I think Stephen thought it was helpful to him too. And so that was a neat experience. Gallery 300 ribbon cutting, awesome to see so much art happening in Healdsburg. Cool business, cool location. So that was a happy event. And then speaking of sports, Healdsburg High School Greyhounds have 3 wins in a row after not winning for 3 years, my friends. So I've been going to all the games. The last game I was volunteering for the cross-country team that my son is part of at the Snack Shack, and I cooked about 150 hamburgers that night. But that was fun, and met a lot of people there. And so they won their away game last week, and they'll be back playing Montgomery on Friday. So come out and support those guys.
The Cornhuskers are 3-0 too for the first time in I don't know how long. So Huskers and the Hounds for me, that's good. So my reports, on the 5th, I had lunch with Supervisor Rabbit and just discussed different things. Obviously there was a thank you related to some of the funding decisions that have come out of there, but also just talking, we kind of just got an update, but just the funding mechanism on Measure O and just sharing with him directly the frustrations that we've had with trying to get the money on time, with all the great work that we're doing and how important it is with how we're submitting our budgets for planning purposes. It needs to be that based on the number of rooms, not room nights. So great conversation with him. Next day I had coffee with Michelle Oxford, who's the new CEO of Providence Hospital. Great conversation with her, really talking about the need for housing, especially with their medical staff and, you know, a lot of different areas where she was looking to, you know, ways to get more involved with the city and different things that they could collaborate with community groups. Followed that up with a post-lunch meeting in Santa Rosa with the Senior Vice President of Kaiser Permanente, Dosi. And again, the topic was housing. And they, you know, their nurses are, you know, some of them are making up to $185,000 a year. And there are issues with trying to find housing and also with recruitments of people trying to come here to Sonoma County and just the challenges that they have. The other part that I talked to him about was really developing a relationship with the city managers group that you're a part of. Your is it weekly or monthly meetings monthly meetings? In the case of an emergency or when something happens, it's really important, obviously, to have a relationship with the elected officials, but, you know, with the city managers and really throughout Sonoma County so that everybody's kind of on the same page. I relayed some of the frustrations we had during the Kincaid fire with PG&E, where we're dealing with a political director versus somebody that's actually a decision maker, and kind of emphasize like we need to have that direct connection. And then on Sunday at 11:30, there will be the groundbreaking for the True West Theater. So we'll be there. That'll be exciting. And then hopefully soon thereafter, another ribbon cutting. So it's nice to be in a town with a lot of ribbon cuttings. That's a good sign. So with that, it is 9:50 and I will adjourn the meeting.